Hey guys, welcome to Green Bean Fiction. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Deku became God of Thunder and fell in love with Momo? Part 1. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in MHA fanfictions. This story is the What If Deku Was the God of Thunder by Vidahaya 420. Now without wasting any more time, let's dive in. In this What If Deku would gain Thor's abilities, which are super strength, super speed, invulnerability, flight, weather and earth manipulation, lightning manipulation, teleportation, super intellect and a Mjolnir, his hammer, which he can throw and call to himself. The hammer can only be lifted by those it deems worthy, so if he were to place the hammer on someone who was unworthy, he would be stuck under the hammer unless Izuku helps him. When Mjolnir is thrown, it can't be stopped or blocked, and once called back will reach Izuku's hand no matter what. It can also charge up the life force of Izuku to use a final attack called the God Blast, which will render Izuku a normal person for 24 hours, and he can easily disguise himself with a little bit of magic he gets from the hammer. He also has the Thor Force, which gives him universal control, but he can't use it unless he's an adult. He also has a mode in which he becomes completely enraged and loses control but gains 10 times his normal power. On a side note, Deku's physical attributes are godlike. He can take on 100% All Might in his sleep. He can also move at light speeds if he wants, but his want is not to destroy the surroundings and hurt civilians. But without any further ado, let's jump into our story. It begins at Asgard, where Thor and Odin are fighting the Midgard serpent in order to stop it from destroying their world, and are fighting very hardly to at least buy enough time for Odin to put Thor's powers and conscience into the hammer and send it to a faraway planet where someone could become the new Thor and make Asgard again. After a long battle, Odin finishes and tells Thor, "It's done and you just needs to throw it, so put the enchantment on the hammer." Then hands Thor the hammer and tells him, "I am proud of you, son. We have ensured the survival of Asgard even after its destruction." Thor replies, "I know, father, but now I need to focus." He then puts the hammer near his forehead and whispers, "Whosoever holds this hammer, if thy be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor." He then throws the hammer towards Earth. While watching the hammer go away, Thor looks at his father and says, "You weren't the best father ever, but I am glad I got to live with you. Thank you." Odin, with tears in his left eye, hugs him. They both hug each other as the Midgard serpent comes towards them and eats them and destroys the core of Asgard, blowing it up and freeing a monster chained under Asgard, who wakes up from his sleep and moves out into space. Meanwhile on Earth, and young Izuku Midoriya is born on July 15th of year 2005. On that very day, Mjolnir fell on Earth in the middle of Japan, destroying a city. All the heroes come to check it out, but only find a hammer in the crater, which they all try to move, but it doesn't budge. Even Prime All Might can't budge it, so they decide to make a research site around it and repair the town. They research the hammer for years, but we skip to the Quirk doctor's office 4 years after Izuku's birth. Izuku was very excited that day because he was gonna get a quirk. He was playing with his All Might figure while his mom was saying yes to every hero-related thing that he kept on saying. Then the doctor called them inside there. The doctor tells Izuku that he is quirkless and should give up on being a hero. This devastates Deku. Just like canon, after that they walk home with Izuku being quiet, and the same events take place up to the final day of middle school, where Bakugo says that he will get into UA, and when he's a pro he would move that unmovable hammer. This makes everyone almost laugh, but they stop themselves except Izuku, who lets out one laugh. This angers Bakugo and he looks at him and explodes his desk. Then the teacher says that Deku also applied for UA. This angers Bakugo even more as he then burns Deku's shoulder and tells him to take a swan dive off the roof, then leaves Deku, then starts walking home, deep in his thought, thinking that Bakugo is right and he should end his life. But then at a tunnel he shakes his head and says, "I'll be a great hero who saves people," with a smile, and enters the tunnel laughing. After a few seconds he hears a voice and turns to see the sludge villain and panics and tries to run away but trips, and the sludge villain catches Izuku and starts to take over his body while monologuing on how he will use him as a meat suit and how he didn't know that the freak is in town. Izuku thinks, what freak? And at that moment he hears the sewer lid bust open and a man steps out saying everything is fine. "Why? Because I am here." Izuku looks with his eyes half open and notices the muscular blonde who said the distorted words, and suddenly feels a lot of air pressure and is released and passes out, as All Might had used Texas Smash to defeat the sludge villain, and then takes an unconscious Izuku out of the tunnel and lays him on the ground, then bottles up the sludge villain and starts reading the boy's notebook and is amazed at the analysis that Izuku had done. While flipping the pages he sees a page of himself and sees a small portion which has autograph written beside it, so he signs his notebook and then goes to Izuku and slaps him lightly, waking him up saying, Thank God, thought we lost you there, young. Before he could say anything else, Izuku jolts up and says, Izuku Midoriya, and I need your autograph. And looks at his notebook, seeing it has already been signed, and thanks All Might, saying that it would be a family heirloom passed on for generations, and then looks up now a bit serious, saying, But All Might, I have to ask you something. All Might replies, I am sorry, I have to go, then CYAA, and jumps. But when in the air notices Izuku dangling for his dear life, and All Might then says, Hey kid, let go, I love my fans, but this is too much. Izuku then replies, But if I let go now, I'll die. All Might then says, Oh yeah, you're right, and lands on roof, saying, Geez kid, you could have died now, knock on the door and wait for someone, I will now take my leave. But before he could leave, Izuku asks him, Can I become a hero even if I don't have a quirk? All Might then looks back and opens his mouth to speak, but only reverts back to his small Might form, and this shocks Izuku. Then All Might tells him to calm down and explains the fight 5 years ago with a villain and how he has a reducing time limit, then says, And as for your question, no, you can't become a hero because it's too dangerous for you and you will slow others down. Now listen here. Kid, I know you might want to become a villain after this, many people do, but if you ever choose to go down that path, just make me your target and leave innocent people out of it. I am sorry kid, but the truth sometimes hurt. Then Small Might leaves and pats his pockets, saying, Let's get you to the police. Only to notice that the pockets are empty and hears an explosion and rushes to check it out. Izuku also goes there and sees Bakugo in the grasps of the sludge villain and thinks, I caused it to escape by hanging on to All Might, I am so useless. Meanwhile, All Might says to himself, Pathetic, such a pathetic hero I am. Izuku then looks over and sees Bakugo's eyes with a pleading look, asking for help, so without thought he runs in and past the heroes and throws his bag at the villain and tries getting Bakugo out and frees his mouth. All Might, seeing this, tries to buff up but is unable to, and as a result the attack which All Might blocked in cannon actually hit Deku, shattering his skull and putting him at the verge of death. And suddenly the hammer starts giving huge energy spikes as thunder rumbles from it, and it shoots up and, breaking the sound barrier, heads towards Izuku at high speeds, and just before it hits him his hand catches it and lightning strikes the area. And when the lightning disappears, it reveals Izuku standing there with Thor's armor without the metal sleeves and the cape like the one above, with Mjolnir in his right hand, his eyes glowing with thunder, and he is a bit taller. He then faces the sludge villain and starts floating and starts spinning his hammer around, creating a small tornado, lifting the villain, and increases the speed, completely breaking the sludge apart, and grabs Bakugo, then lands down. And everyone surround him, asking how can he lift the hammer of Thor, does he now possess the powers of Thor? Izuku says anxiously, I don't know, I don't even know how to change back. Suddenly Thor speaks Trough Mjolnir and says, just hit it on the ground handle first and think of reverting to normal. Izuku makes a bit of space and reverts back to normal and tells everyone, I don't have all the answers, but I promise if the hammer chose me I would not fail and become a great hero. You might be wondering, wow, he is so confident here. Well, it's the adrenaline making him talk due to coming back from death's door. Then he just runs off, and while walking home Bakugo comes up to him and says, even if you can lift the hammer and have the powers of a god, now I'll still beat you up anytime. Then he turns around, walks a bit while tossing and playing with Mjolnir, saying to himself, I have something like a quirk now, I will definitely become a hero, but is scared by All Might walking in front of him out of an alleyway, saying that, I am sorry I said that before, but you can't become a hero. This shocks Izuku, who looks sad, but before he could reply All Might says, because you already are one, you ran in powerless and saved that kid, that makes you a hero. Hearing this Izuku cries, and then All Might tells him about One for All and says that he wants him to be his successor because he is already worthy of it, and he then says, I see that you need the hammer to transform, so you could be seriously hurt before you get the chance to, so it would also help you fight without power. Izuku then says, why not someone else like Bakugo? He was pretty heroic back there and held onto his conscience more than I did, he is a better candidate. All Might replies saying, yes, he is strong, but he was acting selfishly there, he kept on using his quirk which hurt people and stopped the heroes from helping him by keeping them away in that moment. If he hadn't used his quirk he could have been saved before we showed up. Now I am not saying he's a bad person, he just doesn't understands that being a hero means putting others before yourselves, and while people were questioning him he said he could have beaten that villain easily, meaning he only wants to fight villains. Now these type of people are not suited for hero work, so I ask you again, will you accept my power? Izuku this time thinks of everything and says, fine, you convinced me. Then All Might says, meet me at the beach tomorrow morning and do bring the hammer with you. Izuku says, yes sir. and goes home and sees his mom at the door waiting for him worried and hugs him saying, "Oh my boy, are you hurt?" Izuku says, "I'm fine, just tired now, can I go to sleep?" She kisses his forehead and says, "Of course my hero." Izuku smilingly goes to his room and lays on bed ready for bed and goes to sleep and wakes up in a huge floating island, sees female warriors around him and then hears someone say, "Izuku, I suppose." Izuku looks at him and sees a tall strong-looking man with a beard saying, "I've waited for you to arrive. I have many names but you may call me Thor." Last time we left off with Izuku being greeted by Thor in Valhalla, which is the afterlife for those who died fighting in a battle with honor and is inhabited by the female warrior race of Valkyrie. So after seeing Thor, Izuku asks, "You're Thor the God of Thunder?" Thor replies, "Yes, I am, and Izuku, I want to talk to you about your newly acquired powers." Without wasting time talking around, Izuku quickly says, "Yes sir." Then Thor says, "Walk with me kid, you see this is Valhalla where those who died in a battle come to after they die." Izuku quickly shocked asks, "Did I die?" Thor replies, No, I just brought you here, you see this is one of the 9 realms connected by the Yggdrasil, the tree which holds great power and allows life to exist, so my world is Asgard, which was destroyed 14 years ago by the Midgard serpent and other creatures. I died in that battle, but before dying I put my powers into the hammer and put an enchantment on it that only those who are worthy may wield the hammer and use my powers. Now my powers are godlike, I can create weather, manipulate every element including time and space and reality. But you will acquire these 3 when you are 25. For now you can manipulate every aspect of Earth, as my mother was the goddess Freya, the Mother Earth, and you have the Izuku force now. It is what gives you truly god powers, nigh omnipresence, nigh omniscience and nigh omnipotence, but these you will get when you're 25, and it is a power passed down from one king of Asgard to another and takes the name of that person. When I wielded it was called the Thor force, and before that the Odin force, including that you can also access the armory of Asgard. It's full of godly weapons and other stuff. So have you processed the information till now? Izuku replies, "Yes sir, but I have another question. What happens when I hit the hammer and revert back to normal?" "Good question," said Thor. "Well, you become immortal again and put the powers back in it and become weak again, as you lose all my physical aspects such as super strength, speed, invulnerability, and other stuff." "Any more questions?" Thor asks. Izuku replies, "Yes, what if 2 people are worthy of it?" "Ah, another good question. Whoever was deemed worthy first and was transformed into my armor, he will have my full powers even if he isn't holding the hammer, and will be the only one with access to my full powers. If someone else who is worthy lifts the hammer while someone was already deemed worthy, he only gets the weather manipulation and physical boosts as long as he is holding the hammer, but that boosts are about 100% of one for all." Izuku, shocked looking at Thor, asks, "How do you know about one for all?" Thor replies, "Nigh omniscience, I almost know everything." So before I was interrupted, I was going to say, if you let's say lost your worthiness and couldn't lift the hammer, you would lose all the abilities, and whoever picks up the hammer first after that will become the next Thor. But a person who was once worthy but lost his worthiness can gain it back, so don't worry about it much if it ever happens. I have also lost my powers multiple times but always gained them back. And yes, I know you will inherit one for all, and I think you deserve it because I have seen the fire in your heart. So even if you lost my powers, you will be able to help others with one for all, and when you've trained, I will teach you rune magic and spells so you could put one for all in the hammer like my powers and choose future successor for the Quirk. But let me tell you a fun fact, one for all at full strength, it can level a city about 20 miles in length, while my powers at a 100% can break apart planets with sheer physical strength. So you must hold back a lot as not to break something or someone, so you will train in your mindscape while doing you normal work to control your power, because my power doesn't require hard work to control and work on your body to control. You just have to know how to do it, and you will be able to do it. You understand? Asks Thor. Izuku, excited after hearing this, basically jumping up and down like a child, and says, "Yes sir, so how will I go back?" Thor says, "You're going to love this kid. This is cosmic train of sort, which we call the Bifrost. You can summon it at will with the hammer. It can take you wherever you want to go. Just don't leave it open for more than a minute, cause after that it will start to tear the planet apart, destroying it, so be careful. Now I will be sending you to Midgard." Izuku asks, "What's Midgard?" Thor answers saying, "It's what Earth is known as in the 9 realms, which you would have to protect." Izuku, now just accepting whatever is being thrown at him, just nods and says, "I would like to meet you again, bye." Thor then waves at him and sends him to a park near his home through the Bifrost. Izuku, while traveling through it, sees himself flying past stars and planets and then arrives at the park and steps out of the Bifrost, which disappears, leaving a marking on the ground. Then he stakes a note. So it uses some type of symbols to function. Must be those runes Thor was talking about. With this life just got a billion times more interesting and hard. Well, now there's no turning back. After that we change to Thor's perspective, who turn and says, "Your student has chosen a good successor, right, Nana? Sorry for the part being shorter, I promise next part will be better." Last time we left with Izuku meeting Thor and learning his powers and Thor speaking to Nana. Now we start off with Nana replying saying, "You're right, Thor, but you knew Toshinori would pick." Izuku asked, "Nana Shimura?" "No," replied Thor. "I had never used my ability to see the future because I thought knowing the future ultimately causes it to shift, so I didn't know our powers would become one," said Thor. Nana replied, "Me too. Him being able to visit us here means all the past users would be able to help him pretty early, because for him to meet us in his mindscape he would have to be unconscious either by force or tiredness. That's why Toshinori never really improved beyond 100%, because he was never unconscious." For the viewers, yes, it means Izuku would learn the other abilities early. And you may be wondering, what is Nana doing here? Well, she is here because she died while fighting like a warrior, so yay, she's in Valhalla, including the other users as well, so yay, just stick along. So we go back to Earth, where Izuku sneaks in through the window and grabs the hammer and starts go try and use his abilities in the mindscape. And if you guys remember, he's a fast learner, so he pretty much stayed up all night practicing and got full control over his physical aspects and a small portion of his lightning powers. So after that he ended the training and saw the clock and realized he had to meet All Might in about 5 minutes at the beach, so he went to the kitchen, told his mom he will be leaving for training, and quickly runs out of the door with his mother yelling in a very happy voice, "Good luck and be careful." He shouted back to make the voice reach her, "Yay, I will be careful," and then called the hammer to himself and spun it and threw it in the direction of the beach and held onto it to make himself fly. While flying, he just enjoyed the view and reached the beach in 1 second, but he had used his lightning fast perception to look around. He then lands a few feet away from Small Might saying, "Am I late?" All Might, looking at him with a super confused look on his face, says, "No, you're on time. I in fact came early so I could prepare some training plans for you, because truth be told I know nothing about teaching. So I think we should start with your Thor abilities, since the powers of a god could be dangerous." Izuku cuts him off saying, "Oh, All Might, don't worry about it. I have gained full control over my physical abilities." All Might, shocked, asks, "In one day you controlled your power, but how?" Izuku then replies, "Well, when I was sleeping Thor teleported me to Valhalla. It's basically..." But before Izuku could say anything, All Might says, "It's an afterlife for those who lost their life in battles. Like a true warrior, I know a lot about Norse mythology because I thought I should learn about where the hammer came from, so for the past 14 years I have been gaining more knowledge about it, so I know what it is." "So you met Thor and he taught you how to control your power? That's great," All Might said. Izuku then says, "He told me that the powers are already unlocked, I just need to practice holding back in my mindscape, otherwise I could have destroyed the planet." Rubbing the back of his head, All Might drops his jaw to the ground in shock and trying to process the final part, then snaps out of it and looks at Izuku saying, "Well, that's great you learned it, so I think we can work on training your body now so you can handle one for all." Then All Might asks Izuku to take off his shirt, which Izuku does so. All Might is confused to see that Izuku is a bit buff than before and asks, "Young Midoriya, were you always this buff? Because I remember you being skinny and fragile yesterday." Izuku then looks down at his body, then mutters, "So this must be the hammer. It means as long as I am worthy of the hammer it will enhance my physical powers even though I am not using my Thor form. Interesting." All Might says to himself, "This is amusing. It reminds me of how I used to talk so much to my mentor. If only she could meet this boy." Izuku, after finishing his mumbling, looks at All Might, who has a smile on his face and tears in his eyes as he remembers all the good times he spent with his mentor. Izuku brings All Might back from his nostalgia trip by asking, "Are you okay, All Might?" All Might then says, "Yeah, I'm fine, just a little nostalgic, nothing more." Izuku sighs as he is relieved and continues to explain the other things Thor told him. "I'm not gonna write it because it will become too long." After that, All Might trains Izuku with a sparring match without the help of the hammer. Izuku asks, "Can I at least transform first?" All Might says, "No, because then it's a guaranteed win for you. I currently want to check the enhancement the hammer gave you." Then gets in a fighting stance at the other end of the empty area on the beach, and then All Might says, I will throw this rock into the air. When it touches the ground we start, okay? Izuku nods with a smile on his face, keeps his eyes on All Might, and when the rock hits the ground they run at each other and jump in the air. All Might tries to hit Izuku down into the ground by hitting him with both his hands in a downward motion, but Izuku uppercuts All Might in the jaw, launching him backwards but not hurting him because All Might is stronger than Izuku when he's not in his god mode, as he has been given some enhancement to his normal body, nothing more. So All Might then rolls backwards and stumbles on his feet, saying that, "You've got a mean hand, kid," and zooms towards him and throws a Texas smash. Izuku barely dodges the attack and swiftly moves around All Might and hits him in the spine with a full-strength punch. This knocks All Might to his knees, and as he was taking a swing at Izuku by twisting his body around, Izuku lets the punch slide past his face and punches All Might in his bicep, causing All Might's arm to go numb as he hit a pressure point, leaving All Might to fight with only one hand. Now you might be wondering, how is Izuku dodging All Might? Didn't I say he was weaker than him? Yes, he is, but only in strength. Other than that, he's more agile than All Might due to being smaller in size and has a better durability, and in the end the victor of a fight doesn't depend on who can hit harder, it depends on who can get hit harder and can last longer. So Izuku keeps doing it over and over again, hitting him in pressure point but leaving the area near his injury so he doesn't hurt him. This goes on for 1.5 hours before All Might could sew up all of his energy because he wanted to be able to help others if he was required, so they went hard at each other. Izuku was clearly overwhelming All Might with skills and speed to the point he had stopped the use of All Might's arms, leaving him only to use his legs. But at the end Izuku won by making All Might's left leg go numb, basically leaving only his right leg to function. As All Might laid there he told Izuku, "I have never been in such trouble besides the villain that put him in his injured state." Izuku with a proud face says, "Really, I am that good?" All Might, feeling proud that he found such a great successor, tells him, "Yes my boy, now I think we should head home, your mother would be worried." "Yes, All Might, ill go home, but aren't you forgetting that 3 of your limbs are numb?" All Might then says, "Oh, you're right. Can you carry me home then?" Izuku nods and then calls the hammer towards himself and transforms himself and lifts All Might with one arm and then spins Mjolnir and flies to the address All Might told him. He then opens the door with the keys All Might gave him. He then walks towards the couch and puts All Might down and says, "This is a nice place." All Might says, "Thanks," and asks, "Would you like to meet my wife?" Izuku says, "You're married? Oh my god." All Might says, "Yes, I am married, but I kept it a secret to keep my wife and son safe. They live in your city. To keep my son in the dark, she made a plan to give him her best friend's last name and told our son that his father is away in another country working. This will be the first time I would meet her since we last met when she was pregnant." Izuku completely shocked, thinking, "It can't be my mom, right? But if it is, then All Might is my father. I kind of want it to be true, but I don't know why." Then he hears the doorbell ring. He goes towards the door trying to calm down his breathing, opens the door and is in shock to see the person who is at the door. He stumbles back and sits on the couch with a shocked expression. The woman says, stuttering, "Izuku." And that's where it ends. So in the last part we left off with Izuku at All Might's house opening the door for All Might's wife and falling backwards on the couch with the women shocked, saying, "Izuku." Now let's get into the story. Then as All Might sees that they recognize each other and he quickly connects the dots and is shocked as he thinks he broke his own son's heart by telling him to quit. He then curses himself. How could he do that? Izuku, gathering up courage, says, "Mom, is All Might my father?" Inko then says, "Yes, he is." Izuku then holds his head with both of his hands while trying to keep his cool, says, "This day keeps on outdoing itself with a new big detail. Less than 24 hours ago I meet All Might and he saved me. Then I got the hammer and powers. Then All Might said he wanted to train me and I met Thor in basically heaven, and now I learn All Might's my father. Wow, so Mom, why didn't you tell me this before?" "I will tell you about it, but you have to first tell me, why are you with All Might and why did you ask me if he was your father?" Inko asked. Izuku replied saying, "I was saved by All Might yesterday, and then after seeing how heroic I was he decided to train me to better control my new powers. That is the reason why I was in such a hurry this morning. So after we spared for a bit today I knocked him out by making his limbs go numb. And so I had to carry him home, and then he asked me if I wanted to meet his wife. He told me he had not met her in a long time and that they had a son and wanted to keep him safe, so he cut all connection until now, and that his wife had given their son the last name of her best friend and acted as if his father worked abroad. That's when I connected the dots." Izuku finished saying while panting. Inko then says, "Oh, that's why. I guess now I need to answer your question. So I think I should start at the beginning when I first Met your father in middle school. He was a skinny kid who was quirkless and had a heroic heart. I was lucky enough to show him around school, and while going home I was attacked by a thug. Toshinori saved me from that thug. Quirkless at that moment, he became my hero and the love of my life. 3 years later, he met his mentor Nana and he gained her trust and became her successor and got the quirk. After getting the quirk, his latent quirk appeared, which was the ability to add more muscles onto the body for a short time. This didn't increase his strength but instead helped him use 100% of his powers at the start, as his big muscles could keep all the excess energy from overloading his body and breaking his bones. At the day of his entrance exam, I told him if he could get first place I would take him on a date. He made a world record that has yet to be broken. After that we dated. Only a selected few knew about us, they being the principal of UA, his mentor, his teacher. After that we kept on dating until his final year at UA, where he fought the #1 villain, where he lost his mentor. We then had to move to America when we were 19 and lived there while Toshi trained. When we were 28 we moved back married, but kept it hidden. He then became a pro hero, quickly rising in rank, and after he was done with work he would go to his normal self and spend time with me. Another 7 years go by and we learned that I was pregnant. All Might, fearing that we may be targeted, told us to move away from him after the child was born, letting him just see the kid one time, then asked to keep the child hidden under a friend's name and be told that his father is absent due to work overseas, and keep all the info about the child hidden, and the child should never be told that his father is All Might, as this might give the child ego, which Toshi didn't want. Instead, he wanted the child to be kind and helpful. Like me, I agreed. So when the day of your birth arrived, All Might was there but was called, saying a mountain near Tokyo had been destroyed. He thought it was the #1 villain and then told his master to take us away as soon as possible, and then went away, but there he only found a hammer. He tried moving it but failed. He quickly told everyone to handle the situation as he needs to go somewhere. He then arrived back only to discover that we were gone and he could not meet you. After that we moved to our house and lived there. I talked to All Might on the phone from time to time until one day he stopped calling. I thought maybe he got into a fight with that villain, so I waited for something to come up in the news, and when I saw the news, I saw All Might's eye black and his body a bit smaller than before and him holding his chest. I knew that he has some sort of an injury. Right then I got a call from his teacher who told me that my suspicion was true and All Might had gotten injured in his fight and that he had lost half of his respiratory system and that for a few years he would not be able to be in contact with me directly, at least so I kept hope after that. And I am sorry I didn't tell you, and I am also sorry for how I gave up on you. She started crying, asking Izuku to forgive her. Izuku, getting emotional at this point, hugs her, saying, "It's all right, as it's all due to you that I am standing here now, and whatever happened has carved a bright future for me." All Might then stands up and asks, "Do you have space for me as well?" In the family hug, Inko turns to him, walks up to him, and All Might thinks she will slap him for leaving her, but he is shocked as she kisses him. Izuku, seeing this, says, "Oh my god," in his mind. After that Inko says, "No matter what, I love you, Toshi." All Might replied, "I love you too, Inko." Izuku coughs, reminding them that their son is in the room. They quickly find their composure and sit on the couch with Izuku opposite to them. "My boy, I know how you must feel and I know if you are angry, so please." But before All Might could say anything else, Izuku interrupts him, saying, "Dad, I am not angry, I am happy. When I was a kid I used to see you as a father figure and it made me feel bad as I was looking up to someone else other than my father as a father figure, but now realizing that the idol I looked up to and thought of as a father figure is my actual father, it feels like a huge burden has been relieved from my heart. By the way, Dad, I have a question. How did the injury change you to such skinny person? Back then you were lean and muscular. What happened?" asks Izuku. All Might answers, saying that the attack was supposed to vaporize my body, but it luckily missed my central body and only took half of my left lung, a bit of stomach, and almost all the muscle of my body, and it also made my blood black, and then the blood entered my eyes, changing their color to black as well, and that's the reason why my eyes are sunken and I look like a skeleton. Izuku says, "Sorry to bring back such painful memory, Dad." All Might then replies, "I almost forgot, my boy, you are ready for my power now," as he is pulling his hair and holds it out and tells Izuku to eat it. Izuku does so without questioning because he has seen so much. He basically has stopped questioning stuff and has starting to accept reality as it is what it is. After Izuku swallows it, Inko bursts out laughing, saying, "Toshi, I thought he would be weirded out by this like you, but looks like he is a man." All Might then gives a small chuckle and says, "So the power should manifest about 4 hours. I think we should have a family dinner and you two stay here. I'll have your stuff moved over to here. I will be holding a press conference tomorrow revealing that I am married, and my boy, you would make your public appearance as Izuku Yagi." Izuku says, But can I keep Midoriya? I am more used to it. All Might says, sure, whatever you say, and be ready from tomorrow. We will train one for all and try to use your god powers and one for all at the same time. Yes sir, replied Izuku. After that they had a dinner and All Might told them how much he missed Inko. After that they went to sleep at All Might's mansion. Izuku has his own room with all the stuff which was moved there, and Inko and All Might are together alone under one roof as a couple after a very long time. Izuku smiling closes his eyes wishing that this is not a dream and falls asleep, and that is where we end this part, guys. I was planning on messing with you by adding a fake part of Deku waking up and realizing it was a dream, but it thought you guys might get angry, so I left it out. Sorry about that. Last time we left off with Izuku leaning about his father being All Might of all people and then gaining one for all that same day, so that's all for the part. Now before we start the part, I am sorry for the bad conversations in the previous parts. One was more focused on world building, but now, the characters have a proper conversations. So after waking up Izuku looks around to see he's in the room All Might told him to sleep him. This makes Izuku hop out of bed in excitement that it was not a dream. He then looks around for the clock and then looks at the time, seeing it's only 6:37 a.m. He then gets up preparing to get to training with his dad to use one for all effectively as he sees the time on the clock is 6:45 now. He then thinks, well, I think I should hide some of my All Might stuff, as to not creep his father out. As he was thinking this, All Might came in the room and was surprised. He looked around the room with a look on his face which made it seem like he had solved a great mystery. He then looked towards the stairs and asked Inko, so that's why you needed those extra 10,000 yen every month, he said jokingly. He then turned to face Izuku, who was embarrassed by this, looks at his father in the eye and quickly looks away saying, sorry if I craped you out. All Might then says, no my boy, I am not craped out by any of this, though if you could pack all the merchandise, figures and posters in these boxes, which are at the corner of your room. Izuku then looks at All Might with a sad and basically puppy-like eyes saying, please don't throw them away, I like them and I was gonna ask you to sign them. All Might, taken aback by the cuteness, says, no need my boy. I can't sign all of these and you are also missing a few, so pack them and bring them to the basement. There you will find every single merchandise ever made after me already signed. You can take them, says All Might while rubbing his back and letting out a chuckle at the end. Izuku's eyes sparkle with as he wants to do this quickly. His eyes then have a little lightning in them and he packs the old figures, put them in the basement and unpacks the signed figures in a matter of seconds. When he finishes he looks at his father with happiness on his face as he smiles brightly saying, thank you dad. All Might meanwhile, both impressed and taken aback by his son's talent and cuteness, says, no problem son. By the way, when did you learn how to activate one for all? Asks All Might in a bit serious tone now. Izuku replies nervously saying, I just wanted to do it quickly and I was excited beyond compare. All Might then sighs and says, so it was hyperactiveness. Okay, now come down for breakfast. After that we will train one for all. After saying this All Might went down, with Izuku following right after him, walking smiling and being overwhelmed by emotions. After that they ate and left for an empty patch of land All Might owns in the forest. He bought it for training his successor and as a farmhouse. There All Might tells Izuku to meditate for 2 hours to have a clear and focused mind to use one for all. Meanwhile All Might contacted Night Eye, Gran Torino and Principal Nezu to be there at the press conference. While meditating Izuku heard the voice of Thor calling him and he heard Thor say, Izuku, I want to meet you, so come to Valhalla with your father. Izuku then goes to All Might, who had just signed all the papers, and he looks at Izuku with a disappointed look, saying, I thought I said meditate for 2 hours. Izuku then quickly says with confidence as to defend himself saying, I was going to meditate for 2 hours but Thor contacted me. He said he wants to meet us both in Valhalla. Hearing the word Valhalla made All Might's hair shoot up like a dog's ear when he hears the squeaky sound of its toy. He then said, sorry my boy, let's go, no need to keep them waiting, says All Might with pleading eyes. Izuku noticing this wonders why is his father like this. Then he realized, what if he wants to meet his mentor? This made Izuku smile. He then told All Might to come out with him. They both went out in the open and Izuku summoned his hammer and used to Bifrost to travel to Valhalla, where they were greeted by Thor. All Might, seeing Valhalla, was in awe when he suddenly heard a very familiar voice from behind saying, you've got an older young Toshi. He looked back with tears in his eyes and he said, running towards Nana while saying, Master. Nana punches him as soon as he gets closer. All Might fell backwards and looks up to see his master hugging him, crying and saying, you idiot. You could have been killed fighting all for one without passing the quirk, and you treated the boy so badly the first time. All Might was trying to say sorry, while Izuku cuts him off saying, "It's no big deal, he did that to protect me, so no need to." Before Izuku could say anything else, Thor says, "Kid, let her speak." Izuku then looks at Nana and then nods towards Thor. Then Nana looks at All Might and asks him something that shook All Might to his core. She asked him what would have he done if Izuku never saved that kid, and then All Might met Izuku as his son after 2 days as the same quirkless kid. How would have you reacted, All Might? All Might had no words. He was looking down to the ground and then looks up saying, "I would have felt sorry and might have not given him one for all, as I wanted to protect my family, but it didn't go that way. He has proven that he is a worthy successor," said All Might with a serious face. Thor then breaks the tension by saying, "I called you two here to tell you about the enemy you will face in the upcoming year. You would face off with Enchantress, the magic user who was obsessed with me, but I turned her down. Then she went rouge and escaped the destruction of Asgard with Scourge. He was my general and was obsessed with Enchantress, so he followed her. They are both strong, as Scourge is superhumanly strong and his strength can be further enhanced by Enchantress. Meanwhile, Enchantress can cast small spells like telekinetic spells and energy constructs, so be careful. And one more thing, Scourge has my axe called Yarburn. It was enchanted by my blood. It can cut through anything, even through the armor of a celestial, so stay alert." Izuku, feeling a chill down his spine and concern over his face, gathers courage and says, "I will handle them when the time arrives," says Izuku with bravery and courage in his eyes. Thor smiles and says, "One more thing, they should be held in tight security, and you should place 6 runes in Enchantress's room as to prevent her from using her magic, as in a given space only the person who casts the runes can use magic. That's all. Now you may take your leave as you have the press conference." All Might then says, "Thank you for giving us this warning and letting me see my master again." He said this while bowing as to show gratitude. Thor then walks over to him and lifts him up saying, "A true warrior like you should never bow to anyone." All Might then replies, "Yes sir," while wiping the tears of joy from his face. Then Izuku says, "So well, get going, thanks for your help." Thor says, "No need, keep, just make us all proud." After that, Izuku and All Might arrive at UA, where the press conference will be. As soon as they land, Izuku changes their outfit with the disguising ability of Mjolnir and they walk onto the stage with Nezu, Night Eye, Inko and Gran Torino. The crowd cheer after seeing All Might, and after a moment or so of cheering they calm down and the people on the stage take their seats, and All Might says, "I know you guys have many questions, but first I have an announcement." A reporter stands up asking, "Is it about that kid who lifted the hammer and gained the powers?" He said this with a peculiarly interested look on his face. All Might then says, "Yes, and no, you see, the kid who lifted the hammer is actually my son Izuku Yagi." The crowd was shocked. They stayed silent, until Izuku stands up saying, "I know it's a lot to take in, but it's the truth. I myself learned about it yesterday. You see, All Might himself knew nothing about me. He knew he had a child, but he sent us away to keep us safe. He also had no information about me, as if he knew about me he wouldn't have been able to stop himself from visiting, and that could have put us in danger. So I hope you understand his reasoning and don't question his actions or frame him of abandoning his family." He said this in a relaxing tone, calming everyone down. Then suddenly the report says, "I understand, I think we all do, but I have just one question," he said to Izuku. Izuku with a firm smile says, "Please ask." Then the reporter asks, "Your mother shares the last name of All Might, I presume, which is Yagi, am I right?" Izuku nods. Then the reporter asks, "So why is your last name Midoriya here?" Izuku then says, "Well, it was a cover-up and I thought this was my real last name and I am quite used to it, so I want to keep it." The reporter says, "Oh, that's the last question I had." He then sits down and another reporter stand up saying, "When I saw you on the scene with the hammer and saw your uniform, I went to your school and there I learned that you were quirkless, am I right?" Everyone is surprised. Izuku then gulps for a moment and replies with confidence, "No, I am not quirkless. It's just that when I was younger my quirk was undetected as it was not active, and I think when I was in a near-death experience it emerged." The reporter then says, "Sorry, just had to get that out of the way." Izuku says, smiling, "No problem, and as for my quirk, you guys must be wondering what it must mean. Well, it is similar to my father's quirk, but it is more like energy manipulation. I can use the energy for anything like super strength, speed, durability, and some other things I don't know as of now." The reporter then says, "Thank you for explaining, and what about the powers you get from the hammer?" Izuku then explains only the concept of worthiness, nothing more, nothing else.
Then the reporters get up saying, "Thank you for your time," and leaves. After this Izuku heads home with his parents and he was bummed he couldn't talk to Night Eye.
After getting home, All Might tells him, "You should rest and that from tomorrow they will train for the entrance exam and you would not ask for any help from Thor and go meet him in this time and learn to do this yourself." Izuku nodded and asked All Might, "Do you know someone who could read minds of others? I would like to practice to protect my mind from intruders." All Might gives it a thought and says, "Ah yes, the pro hero Mandalay's Quirk should help you in training." Izuku replies, "That's great, so can you contact her tomorrow?" All Might nod. Izuku then goes to sleep and after that the trains with Mandalay and All Might for 10 months until the day before the entrance exam. In this time Izuku learned to manipulate earth, better control over weather, and can block psychic attacks and can control 100% of One for All thanks to his enhanced body. He didn't meet any users of One for All in this period as he wanted to figure stuff out for himself. So on the day of the entrance exam, he heads over to Ua and at the entrance says, "This is what I have lived for, nothing can stop me now." And that's where this part ends. Last time we left off with Izuku walking into UA to attend the entrance exam and him being the son of All Might was revealed to the public. Guys, I also want to say the romance might be a bit sloppy as the writer has never had a girlfriend or neither has someone asked him. Izuku walks in through the Ua entrance and heads to the observation area to meet with the teachers and watch the normal provisional exams. Because he was recommended by Nezu himself, so he is there to wait until the combat part of the recommended exam started, as whenever Izuku and Nezu were together he always outsmarted Nezu, so they knew he would ace and that would reduce the fear of students in the practical, as many would say one person got full marks, so can we. So they just invited him to watch others till his time for exam came. So him tripping meeting Iida and Uraraka never happened. When he was viewing the normal exam he glanced at Bakugo and was pissed because in these 10 months Izuku learned the truth of life, that bad people are bad and good are good, and he also realized that Bakugo was nothing like a hero. When he discussed this with Nezu, Nezu told him that he could always break him down when they were in Ua and built him up as a better person. So Izuku is no longer that good boy, I mean he is still innocent at the core and with others, but he treats bad people accordingly to what they deserve. After seeing Bakugo, Nezu says, "I think we should release the zero-pointer robot." Izuku then leans forward paying more attention saying, "If something goes wrong I will stop it."
Nezu says, "Fine." When the zero-pointer appears Uraraka is trapped like in canon, so Izuku tells Nezu, "Stop the robot." Nezu presses the button to deactivate it but it doesn't work. Seeing this Izuku runs out and towards the zero-pointer with 100% of One for All and quickly gets Uraraka out into a safe distance and then sends out an air punch and destroys the torso of the robot. Remember, this is Izuku with 100% and an enhanced body.
After this he quickly leaves in an instance without being seen, but because of the wind pressure everyone thinks it was All Might. Izuku then arrives back saying, "That was easy." All Might jokingly says, "Now no need to get cocky, you don't want to become what you hate." Izuku giggling says, "You're right, well I guess it's time for my exam, I will meet you at home then." All Might says, "Be careful," and waves at Izuku. Izuku says off course while waving back and teleports to the entrance to the city F, where he is stopped by Iida because in this he was recommended by his brother. Iida then asks him, "Who are you and why are you here? You weren't even at the theoretical exam." Izuku says, "My name is Izuku Midoriya and I was allowed to skip the theoretical part of the exam because I am the smartest person alive, so that would have lowered their reputation." Everyone then says, "You're All Might's son, aren't you?" Izuku then says, "Yes I am, but we have a task at hand, and you don't need to apologize, you were just being careful as to not let an intruder enter." Iida nods. Izuku then with a smile says, "Now good luck everyone." As soon as the doors were opening he ran in with everyone asking, "Why did he run in? Present Mike didn't say go." Suddenly Present Mike shouts, "Go, there are no countdown in real battle." Izuku destroys the robots like Thor did to the army in Thor Ragnarok by using One for All and racks up to 360 points in 3 seconds. He then walks around and after 10 minutes he flies up to see if anyone needs help. Suddenly he hears the ground shaking. He notices that here are 3 zero-pointers in the city. He was about to hit them but he saw to the far right of the city that someone froze an entire robot, it being Shoto Todoroki. Izuku smiles saying, "He's definitely in my class." And before you ask, yes, Izuku could clearly see Todoroki even though they were about 2 kilometers away. He then turns to see a girl blowing up the face of the zero-pointer with a cannon. He remarks saying, "Another classmate." Then he realizes that she got tired from making the cannon and he sees the third 0-pointer approaching her. He rushes to her and as the robot was about to step on her he stopped its leg by lifting it and then threw the robot upwards and hit it with Mjolnir, shattering it. Then he lands down and reaches out to the girl asking her, "Are you okay, my lady?" She takes his hand a bit flustered on the comment, and says, "Yes, I'm fine, just a little tired." Izuku then says, "Oh, is that so?" and lifts her bridal style saying, "I hope you wouldn't mind me helping you." He said this so charmingly that the girl said, "I don't mind." He then walks out with her. All the teachers see this and say, "That was smooth," while giving a smug look to All Might, who says, "He's my son after all." Izuku, after leaving the city, put the girl down, giving her some chocolate milk from his bag and asks her, "What's your name?" The girl says, "It's Yaoyarozu, Momo Yaoyarozu." "Okay. Then do you mind if I call you Momo?" Momo replies saying, "I don't mind if it's you." Then quickly covers her mouth looking at Izuku while blushing like mad. Izuku then says, "Okay Momo, then you can call me Izuku and I guess I should get going," says Izuku while putting his cute smile on. Momo says, "Bye." While thinking how bright his smile was and how she skipped a beat, Izuku while walking says, "Momo-chan, I guess we'll meet tomorrow." Then he teleported out of there. Momo, while sitting, gets excited to see him again and starts heading home as well. When Izuku gets home, All Might and Inko hug him, congratulating him on getting in. All Might also adds that he not only got first place but broke All Might's record and setting the new record at 420. Izuku with a smug smile then says, "I know I am a gangster in these things." Then he says, "Pun intended." His parents while laughing says, "Yay, you are now go get some sleep, you have a big day tomorrow and you may get to meet the girl." Izuku then turns around flustered saying, "Mom, Dad, come on, it's not like that." They both says, "Sure, that's what your dad always said, now go get some sleep." Izuku then leaves and goes to sleep. The next day Izuku gets dressed and rushes out and goes to UA and looks for class 1A. He then finds it and opens the door, remarking how big it is. As soon as he opens it he sees something which upsets him. He sees Bakugo acting like a jerk and with Iida telling him to follow order. Izuku then looks back at Aizawa, who's on the floor sleeping in his bag, hiding his presence within the chaos. Bakugo then sees Izuku and runs at him shouting, "Deku, you stupid useless garbage, how did you get here?" As he was about to hit Izuku he was blown back in his seat as Izuku had uses his telekinesis. He then death stares Bakugo with thunder in his eyes saying, "Fix that attitude of yours or I'll do it for you, understood?" Bakugo from the fear nods. After that Izuku walks to Mineta telling him to move behind Bakugo as Izuku wanted to sit beside Momo. Mineta quickly gets up saying, "I won't get to sit with the hottie now." Izuku gives this a smile and sits beside Momo, greeting her by saying, "Good morning Momo-chan." Momo blushes and replies, "Good morning Izuku." Everyone thinks they have nicknames for each other, they must be dating. Then Aizawa stands up and looks at the class saying, "It took you 4 minutes to shut up, that would not do it if you want to be heroes. I am Shota Aizawa, your teacher for the next 3 years at UA. Now get into your PE uniform and meet me in the ground." Everyone goes to the changing room. When Izuku was wearing his uniform, Kirishima asks, "Wow, you're so bulky, what workout do you do?" He asks excitedly. Izuku with a grin then replies, "Nothing, I just got it one day." Kirishima then says, "No one gets abs and muscle in one day, unless you're All Might's son who lifted the hammer of Thor." "You're correct." Everyone except Bakugo and Todoroki get excited saying, "Wow, can you get us his autograph?" Before Izuku could say anything, Mineta called all of them saying that here was a peephole. All the boys were gonna say something but Izuku stops them saying, "It's okay, let him see." As they get confused and look back at Mineta, who now has his eye near the hole, gets stabbed in the eye by Jiru. Izuku says, "Knew it." All the boys look at him and ask, "You knew what?" By the way, when I say all the boys or everyone, I mean everyone except Bakugo and Todoroki. So then Izuku replies saying, "I read Mineta's mind in class and saw his past. He acts like a pervert due to his bad childhood, which I would not tell anyone because privacy. But Mineta, despite acting perverted, respects women, and that's why he announced his plan out loud so someone could stop him. That's why I respect him, that he says things out aloud so people can save themselves, and he is also taking the title of a pervert, a creep, and a trash of a human to save the girls. Now PLZ don't hate on him because he acts as a pervert, it's bad past. So now if everyone is ready, let's go. It is best if we don't keep Aizawa waiting. I heard he expelled everyone from class 1A last year on the first day." They all get scared and then walk to the ground where Aizawa tells them that they would be doing a quirk assessment test. Uraraka says, "Aren't we supposed to go to the orientation?" Aizawa says, "We don't have time for those stupid things. Now let's start." Mina excitingly says, "This will be fun." Izuku under his breath says, "Oh no, she did it." Aizawa turns around and says, "Fun you say so, here's what we do, whoever comes in last will be expelled." Everyone except Momo and Izuku say, "That's unfair." Aizawa says, "Unfair, huh? Tell me your villain attack, natural disaster and accidents, not unfair. Life is full of unfairness and a hero is supposed to overcome this unfairness. So now stop talking and let's get to the test." He then throws a ball towards Bakugo saying that you got third in the entrance exam, so I want you to show everyone where the top 3 begins. Bakugo says, "TCHI should be no one, not some low-life rats." Meanwhile Izuku is looking at Bakugo and his blood was starting to boil from anger until he heard Momo whisper, "You know he is bluffing, right?" Izuku then telepathically replies, "Yeah, I know, it's just a bluff to make us do our best." Momo then says, "Wait, how were you talking? You didn't even open your mouth." Izuku replies saying, "Oh, I used telepathy." Then they both smile at each other and nod, acknowledging each other in terms of intellect for figuring out that Aizawa was bluffing. Then Bakugo blasts the ball, getting it to 705.2 meters. Aizawa then says, "Good job Izuku, you're up." Izuku then walks up saying, "Only the quirk, right?" Aizawa says, "Yes." Izuku then charges 100% of one for all and throws the ball high up. Then he winds his fists back and punches the air so fast that the air catches fire due to the friction from his speed.
I borrowed this move from Might Guy from Naruto. The fire hit the ball, sending it up and up. Meanwhile Izuku looks at everyone saying, "It will go outside the orbit, believe it." Everyone is saying, "No way, your quirk is so strong." Aizawa then shows them the counter reading infinity. Bakugo angrily jumps towards Izuku, but Izuku uses 1% of one for all and zooms behind Bakugo, punching him in the chest, gut and the back, and then knocking him to the ground. Before you say Bakugo is not that weak, he was able to fight Izuku at 8%. Well, first of all, that was a fight for the plot. In an actual fight Bakugo can do nothing as he doesn't have any speed enhancing or perception enhancing quirk. He would not be able to see a Izuku who has super speed. He only has the advantage of durability, as his body would have needed to be stronger to not harm himself from his explosions. Now back to the story. Izuku stands over Bakugo saying, "That was just 1% of my quirk. You see, you are nothing but a wasteless empty space of pure trash and disgust." He then steps off of Bakugo telling everyone, "I warn you to stay away from this man. He is an egotistical person who would just use you and look down at you and will always hurt you." Everyone looks at Bakugo, who was yelling, "You had this power when I bullied you for years, why did you hide it?" Hearing this everyone agreed with Izuku, saying, "You're right, Midoriya." Hearing this Bakugo tries to attack them, but Aizawa grabs him with his scarf, keeping him shut in place. Izuku seeing this smirks and asks Aizawa with a grin on his smug saying, "Can I begin the show?" And that's where this ends. I know I ruined it at the end, so sorry. After that Aizawa, while freeing Bakugo, tells him with his hair floating and eyes glowing red that, "If you do that again you will be suspended. You're lucky that you have a valuable quirk. That is the only reason you are here." Bakugo, pissed, was about to say something, until someone placed his hand on his shoulder and he heard a cold voice with a killing intention behind him, as he felt chills run down his spine along with lightning, saying, "Speak what you are thinking and I'll send you to space." Mark my word. Everyone was scared seeing Izuku saying this while holding Mjolnir and having lightning in his eye. Bakugo looks back and is scared so much he trembles backwards with fear, saying, "Sorry, I am sorry, PLZ, don't hurt me." Izuku seeing this calms down and throws the hammer away towards the forest, and reverts back to his new normal form, which is his enhanced form. It looks like if Deku had the body of young All Might, in which All Might looked like Chris Hemsworth, the person who plays Thor in the movies. Izuku then with a tough voice says, "I won't as long as you stay in line." Bakugo agrees and stands with the crowd, who were a little scared. Izuku sees them scared and in his cute and cheerful voice says, "Guys, no need to be scared. I only treat people accordingly to their actions." Hearing this they all think never do something wrong in front of him or to anyone he might know. Then they all did the tests where Izuku demolished everyone. The only one who he couldn't beat was Uraraka in the ball throw, as they both tied in that. So after the test the scores were Izuku Midoriya in first, Momo in second, Shoto Todoroki in third, Bakugo in fourth and Hagakure in last place because Mineta was second in the sidestepping, so he got more points than Hagakure and got 15th place. Everyone except Izuku and Momo thought that Hagakure will be expelled, but Aizawa says that it was a motivating lie. Now get back to class, you have the rest of the day free. After this everyone went back, changed and got back to class. There Izuku went and sat beside Momo and said, "Hey Momo-chan, congrats on getting second, you're really skilled." Momo, blushing hardcore, says, "Thank you. You yourself are quite talented even without the god powers." At this point Momo was a blushing mess. Izuku notices this, then smirks and says, "Oh, if you're feeling hot I can make the room colder." Momo then says, "You don't have to do that." She couldn't even look Izuku in the eyes. Izuku then, while turning, says, "Well, I will now check out our syllabus for the year, so I'll talk to you later." Momo nods, then they both sit down. Shoto, being beside Momo, heard everything and says to himself, "What stupid people, they want to be heroes but the girl looks cute and smart." For everyone who might think that Todoroki was not interested in anything, but it was revealed that he noticed Momo and even voted for her, so he definitely paid attention to her. He then looks at his syllabus and everyone stayed away from Bakugo. Bakugo was humiliated by this on the inside, as he was given everyone's attention growing up. This happened and the day passed. Everyone was leaving for their home. Izuku was walking towards a buffed up All Might, but he was stopped by Iida, who said while bowing, "I know that you are much stronger than me, so I was hoping if you could teach me something so I can be a better hero." Izuku says, smiling brightly, "Yes, of course, I'll always help a fellow classmate and a friend." Iida was a bit shocked hearing Izuku addressing his as a friend, and he said, "But you've only known me for one day." Izuku says calmly, "That is true, but when I see in your eyes I see a hero and a good person, so I want to be your friend. If you're okay with that." Iida says, "Of course." As he moves his hand out for a handshake, Izuku reaches out and takes his hand, shaking it and saying, "Well, I finally made a friend," while smiling. Iida said, "I am glad to be your friend." They were then stopped by Uraraka, who comes over to Izuku and Iida, and the thing went just like canon, with Uraraka asking, "Why did Bakugo call you Deku?" Izuku then explains how Bakugo was his bully, a bit irritated. Iida and Uraraka were feeling bad for Izuku. He then says, "No need to be sad, the past has passed, we can only move forward with our past pushing us in the direction we choose, and I've already proven I am not the useless Deku. Now do you guys wanna join me? My dad would drop you guys off." Uraraka says, "All Might will drop us off, so cool." They both excitedly says yes, and as they were going to the entrance Momo came up to them and asked, "Got room for one more?" Izuku says, "Always, now let's go, he doesn't have a lot of time." They then arrive to see All Might beside a Mercedes Jeep, who then asks, "Are these your friends?" Izuku nods and asks, "Could you drop them off?" All Might, smiling, says, "Sure, I am just happy you made friends. Now everyone get in the Jeep and tell me your address." They tell the address and get in the car, and while Iida and Uraraka were asking All Might questions and All Might was replying, Izuku was talking to Momo using his telepathy. They talked for a while, then All Might noticed Momo blushing and saw Izuku's jaw moving a bit, so he understood that they were talking telepathically, and after dropping Iida and Uraraka he goes to Momo's house, where just before getting off Momo hears Izuku telling her telepathically that, "I knows you have a crush on me." Momo blushingly thanks All Might and runs into the house with a face redder than a tomato. All Might, while going home, tells Izuku, "So you going on a date?" Izuku replies, "I'll think about it." When they get home All Might reverts back and tells Izuku, "Thor came over to meet you." Izuku, surprised, says, "He came here on our world?" All Might in a concerned voice says, "Yes, he is in the backyard waiting to talk to you." Izuku then goes out and sees Thor sitting there. Izuku then takes a deep breath and asks, "Thor, what is so urgent that you came here yourself?" Thor, worried, looks back and says, "Let me tell you a story, kid." Izuku then gets a bit scared, wondering, if he has to tell a story this must be really bad. He sits next to Thor with Inko and All Might near them. Thor then says, 1,000,000 years ago, when I was just the prince and not in possession of Mjolnir, I faced a great threat known as Gorr, the God Butcher. He used to live on a planet where their gods abandoned them for some reason, and his family died. He only survived. He was enraged and pledged to kill all gods in the universe. He also found the all-black Necrozword, a weapon of pure darkness created by the symbiote god Null K, as silent in pronunciation, who used it to fight the Celestials. Izuku asks a bit scared, who are the Celestial and who was Null? Thor answers, the Celestials are a race of god-like creatures who sometimes create life on planets. Think of them angels who work for God. Now Null was the first symbiote. The symbiote can attach with a host and give them some powers. Some of them might come to Earth in the future, but when I met Gorr, I fought him and he captured me and took me to future. He had combined himself with his future self from the pond of time. He then took me to 5 million years from now in the future where I fought him with the help of you and the you from that future. What happens is that when he fused he only exists before that point, and at the time you follow him to the future other than that he does not exist. And the future version of you is from the original future, but because of him messing with time it is now an alternate timeline and your future will be different, but we can still access that timeline. So in some time you will face him with an older you and a younger me. Izuku, completely shocked, said, I will prepare for it. All Might and Inko at this point stopped thinking too much and just started accepting the facts. Thor then says, good, now I will teach you some basic runes to help you. He then gave Izuku a book and told him to practice, and for you, he said, looking at All Might. He took his hand to All Might's wound, healing it completely, and tells him, I have placed a lock on your power. You won't lose the Quirk because he will need all the help in the future. Now I must leave. He then fades away. Izuku then looks at his parents with determination. I promise I will save everyone and live through with it. All Might back in his normal self, which is his form from high school. Inko then says, I will always support you while you two do your best. All Might nods smiling and then says, so my boy, let's train for the dark future. Before I end this, let me explain how Gorr exists only in 3 moments. So because he fused with his future self he was kicked out of the timeline except the moments which needed him, which were his life before finding the Necrosword, meeting and capturing young Thor, fighting and running away from our Izuku, and at 5 million years into the future with old Izuku at the end. It's not the end of the series, it's the end of Gorr arc. Last time we left off with Thor telling the Yagi family about Gorr the God Butcher and how his upcoming battle will take place. He then healed All Might and put a fixation on his quirk to stop it from being reduced. This made All Might go to his prime, as he was now stronger than the time he fought All for One, as One for All had only grown in the 5 years, but All Might's body was unable to handle that much power, but now he can handle the power. Thor also gives Izuku a book about the weapons of Asgard and the rune which can be used by Izuku for some basic magic. After this, Izuku and All Might go practice out their new powers, with All Might and Izuku both unlocking Black Whip and meeting the 4th user to whom Black Whip belonged. They didn't go to the One for All realm, but instead went to Valhalla, where they discussed the quirk copying aspect of One for All. In this time period, Izuku can use a bit of the runes to heal someone and to create force field and see people's past and feel their feelings, but he needs a little focus for this. We skip 2 days of them honing their abilities until the day of the Hero 101 class. There Izuku was talking to Momo with telepathy, as Momo was talking to Shoto as well. Seeing Momo blush, Shoto thought Momo was blushing towards him, but his imagination was cut short with Izuku telling him, she's blushing because I am talking to her with my telepathy, so focus on class. Shoto then says, sorry for misreading the situation, you two carry on. Izuku says, no problem, and he then asks Momo if she would. But suddenly All Might came through the door shouting, I am walking through the door like a normal person. Everyone except Bakugo, Momo, Uraraka, Ida, Shoto and Izuku say, wow, it's All Might. All Might was then going to say something, but Izuku cuts him off saying, Dad, could you have been 1 minute late? He then switches to telepathy and tells All Might, I was going to ask Momo out. All Might then, speaking normally, says, I am sorry my boy, I was just excited to teach the new generation of heroes, so today we will be doing a battle training. Now a hero needs to look cool, so get your uniforms. As 19 case pop out of the wall as All Might says, everyone grab your costume and meet me at Ground Alpha. They all change into their costumes except Izuku. As he walks there in his uniform, everyone asks him, why aren't you wearing your costume? Izuku then says, I wanted to show it to you all. As he puts out his hand and calls the hammer. As soon as the hammer arrives in his hand, he is struck by lightning, and when the lightning fades, he is standing there wearing Thor's costume from Infinity War without the scales on the arm and the cape, but he still has those arm bands that Thor has. Everyone is amazed at this except Bakugo, Todoroki and All Might. They ask Izuku, what is that costume made of and how did he change the clothes? Izuku then replies saying, the costume is made of Uru metal, the strongest in the universe, and I can magically summon my costume at will. All Might then coughs and says, "So now shall we start?" Iida then asks All Might, "What will we be doing?" All Might then says, "We will do indoor battle exercise to help you prepare for a fight if it ever occurred inside a building or a secret lair. Now I know it may be a bit too much for the 4th day of school, but a hero is someone who can adapt to any situations. Now I have already picked the teams. The teams are Bakugo and Todoroki, Momo and Izuku, and the rest are the same except Shoji is now with Ida and Uraraka is with Mineta." All Might then says, "The villains, which are Bakugo and Todoroki, go in and place the bomb, while the heroes wait outside." Izuku talks with Momo saying, "So what's our plan?" Momo then replies, "You don't have one." Izuku then says, "Well, I think you are very intelligent, so I kinda wanna hear your take on the situation." Momo then says, "Okay, so I have a plan. It only works if you use your hammer." Izuku says, "Go on, I'll use it." "The plan is for you to go straight in while I climb up the side of the building with a grapple and enter through the roof. I sneak attack Bakugo, making him trip. In that moment you place your hammer on his back. I think he should be immobilized, as he will not be able to lift the hammer, as he must be unworthy. After that we deal with shoot." Izuku chuckles and says, "I knew you were awesome." Momo is sent to a dream world while blushing. Izuku then says, "Hello Momo." She doesn't respond. He then shocks her a little and says, "All Might said start, let's go." Then they split, with Momo climbing the building and Izuku going in straight to the top floor in front of the room with the bomb. As he gets there, Bakugo rushes at him. Izuku, expecting this, uses 1% of One for All to knock back Bakugo a bit as Bakugo goes to fight him, but he can't do anything to Izuku. He only has explosion and nothing to help him keep track of Izuku or react to him. Suddenly Momo came down from the roof and makes a staff, tripping Bakugo. As soon as Bakugo trips, Izuku calls Mjolnir and places it on Bakugo's back as Bakugo tries to get up, but he is pinned to the ground and says, "No, I won't lose, not to this shitty nerd and this girl," as Momo puts the capture tape on Bakugo. All Might says, "Bakugo is out." Bakugo then explodes Momo's leg out of anger. Seeing this, Izuku knocks Bakugo out with a kick to the face, dislocating his jaw. As Izuku was about to heal Momo, suddenly ice is sent towards them. As Shoto appears, the ice hits Momo in the head as she is knocked unconscious. Izuku looking at Momo, then at Todoroki, who says, "Stop messing around and fight me. We have to fight like we are really enemies." As Shoto sends another ice barrage at Izuku, Izuku summons fire with the help of runes and then controls the fire, as he can control anything found on Earth except life, as Thor's mother was Freya, the Mother Earth. So Izuku is invulnerable to anything from Earth, including sickness. He then controls fire and melts the ice and shoots fire at Todoroki, distracting him as he rushes behind him with 10% of One for All and hits him in the back, sending him flying into the fire, knocking him out as he puts Todoroki in capture tape. All Might yells, and the hero wins. All Might then says, "Izuku, take them to Recovery Girl, she will heal them." Izuku says, "No worries, I got this," as he heals all of them with the rune magic. As they wake, Todoroki walks away angry while Bakugo goes out filled with rage. Izuku, seeing them walk off, sighs and asks Momo, "Are you okay?" Momo, blushing, says, "Yay, I am." Izuku says, "Good, because I'll be picking you up at 7 p.m, so be ready, we will be going to the movies." Momo, not thinking, says, "Yes." Then when she realizes what he said, she says, "You're asking me out?" Izuku says while smiling cutely and brightly, "Of course, and I already know your answer, so let's go after the class. I'll drop you off and then we could go on our date." Momo, a blushing mess, follows Izuku while punching the air in excitement behind him. They reach the observation room where All Might says, "Good job, my boy and young Momo. Now who will tell me who the MVP was?" Everyone says, "Izuku." All Might then says, "Yes, now the rest can take their turns." After the class was over, Todoroki walks up to Izuku saying, "I declare that I will surpass you with only my ice side." Then walks off. Izuku, hearing this, says loudly so everyone can hear, "Good, we have two egotistical asshats, just great." Todoroki just walks off angrily. After hearing this, Izuku then sighs and says, "Dad, I will be going. I need to drop Momo off and get ready for my date." All Might then says, "Have fun." Then Izuku says, "I know." He then wraps his hand around Momo's back and spins his hammer and leaves flying with Momo holding, as she was afraid. Izuku then showed her how beautiful it was up here. Momo blushes and holds Izuku even tighter. They both enjoy the view. Then Izuku lands at Momo's front door and knocks and says, "I must go now, and before I do that, let me just do this." He He kisses Momo's cheeks and then says, 7 p.m. okay, and flies off. Momo then walks in with her mom asking, "You're going on a date with All Might's son? I heard he is a very good kid, so I just wanna say I approve, so now get ready, I will talk with your father. Now go so you don't get late." Momo, blushing and hiding her face with her hands, says, "Mom, stop teasing me." We cut back to Izuku, who arrives at his house and walks into his mom and says, "Mom, I need your help to get ready for my date." Inko, with the surprised Pikachu face, says, "A date?" Izuku, with an embarrassed manner, says, "Yes, now please help me." Inko, activating her mom mode, runs to his room and grabs a bunch of clothes and brings them to Izuku and says, "Now wear these." Izuku, surprised, walks away with the clothes, asking his mom, "So how long were you planning my first date?" He said this in a teasing voice. His mom, embarrassed, says, "Well, ever since you turned 12. Izuku hugs his mom, saying, "I am thankful to have you as my mom." Then he walked off with the clothes and changed. It was around 6:30 p.m. Izuku went to his mom and said, "I will be going now." His mom told, "Behave well," and handed him a bunch of roses, and asked him who the girl is. Izuku then smiles and looks down and then raises his head to look at his mother and says, "Her name is Momo Yaoyarozu. She's in my class and was the girl which I saved from the 0-pointer in my exam." His mom, with a grin on her face, says, "Oh, the prince saving the princess from the beast, where have I heard this before?" Izuku then giggles and says, "Now I'll go, don't want to be late for the first date by mom." Inko said, "Now go, and now what did I say you need to do?" Izuku replied in a sarcastic voice, "I need to behave." Then he walked off and reached Momo's house at exactly 7 p.m. As he reached her house, she stepped out and they were both impressed that they both were people who follow time very efficiently. Izuku walks up to her and hands her the roses, saying, "The most beautiful roses for the most beautiful girl." Momo takes the roses and says, "And the two from the most handsome boy." Izuku smiles and reaches his hand out and asks, "May I?" Momo then holds his hand and they walk over to the movie theater. A side note, they are in, let's say, a bit casual clothing, so they are not wearing expensive outfits. When they arrive, they choose a romantic movie and they head inside, and Izuku, being a smart person, books the corner seat for them and lifts the arm rest between them and puts it to the back so while watching the movie Momo could cuddle next to him. After about an hour and a half, Momo thinks that this is her chance to cuddle with him and starts to cuddle his side. Izuku, smiling that his plan worked, slowly puts his hand around her shoulder. Momo blushes and puts her face in his chest to hide the fact that she is blushing. Izuku then smilingly says, "You know I don't deserve someone so cute like you." Momo shoots up and says, "No, you deserve me and I deserve you, period. This is our date, so don't ruin the mood." She said this while pouting. Izuku then giggles and says, "Fine, I never knew my first girlfriend would be so caring." Momo completely breaks down, muttering, "He called me his girlfriend." Izuku tries to fix her, and when he finds out she's not responding, he kisses her cheeks, which brings Momo back. She asks, "You want me to be your girlfriend?" Izuku sarcastically, "Of course, why would I ask you if I didn't want to make you my girlfriend? So what is your answer?" He said this quite romantically. Momo takes a deep breath and says, "My answer to you will always be yes." Izuku then again smiles and pokes her forehead somewhat like Itachi did to Sasuke. Then they talk, and after the movie Izuku is walking Momo home until they reach her home. He then says goodbye to her, but she asked, "Do you want to meet my parents?" He said, "How about after 1 month so I can get ready to meet them, and now I have to go, I need to train a bit, so bye." He calls his hammer and is about to fly away. Before he does, Momo says, "I'll meet you tomorrow." Then he reaches his home in a split second. They both enter the house at the same time and their parents asks them how was the date, and they both tell them what happened. Now side note, the same thing happened to both of them at the same time but at different locations. Now after explaining, their parents are very satisfied with what they heard and they give their children a thumb up, indicating that they approve. Now we skip to the next day where Izuku walks to the school and sees Momo waiting for him. They both greet each other and start to walk to class. On his way, Izuku gets bold and holds Momo's hand. Momo blushes and just goes with the flow. They enter the class and everyone is watching them hold hands. The girls think, "Man, she got the best boy, but at least our friend is happy." The boys take a mental note: never mess with Momo or you will get fried like Todoroki, or worse, you get broken bones. After a while, Aizawa comes in and says, Everyone get your hero costumes, we will be going to the USJ, which is not Universal Studios Japan, by the way. Now get on the bus in 5 minutes or we leave you. They all wear their costumes except Izuku. Now All Might joins them in this because he doesn't have the limit, so when they are in the bus everyone asks Izuku, what are your abilities with Thor's powers? Izuku explains the strength, speed, invulnerability, earth control and other aspects of his power. He also explained the worthiness part, which everyone was surprised and in awe about his powers. Denki then says, how about when we get our dorms we do a worthy test in the common room? Izuku says, sure, but I highly doubt anyone of you would be worthy. Everyone says, don't be mean. Then suddenly Shoto stands up and says, you think you're better than everyone, then you're just like Bakugo. Izuku says, listen, I said that jokingly while Bakugo pushes other down, and don't make me talk about you only using 50% of your power and wants to be a hero. A hero doesn't hold back if he wants to grow and help people, so yeah, you're pathetic just like him. All Might then says, Izuku Midoriya, stop this instance. Izuku then stops, seeing that his father was irritated to the point he used his full name. Then the entire bus was silent for the rest of the trip. When they reached the USJ and got off the bus and walked towards the entrance, and they met 13 there. After meeting 13, Uraraka says that, I am your biggest fan. After this 13 says, you will be doing rescue training except for Midoriya, as he already is trained for this stuff and you guys might rely on him as he is the strongest, and not to mention he also saved Uraraka from the 0-pointer. Uraraka turned around. It was you who saved me, thank you, she said while crying. Izuku says, no need to cry, I was just doing my job. Now guys, do your best, and if you guys get in danger I won't help, so you are on your own. Then Bakugo says, annoyed, why do we even have to do this stupid exercise? I mean, there is nothing to rescuing. Then before he could say anything else, Izuku grabs his jaw and lifts him up, saying menacingly, can you for one goddamn day drink down your stupid temper and realize how wrong you are? He then drops him and says, man, I was your friend, I would do anything to go back to that, but as long as you are like this, that is impossible. Please realize that whenever I wanted to help you I did it as a friend, and you saw it as a weak person helping the strong who don't need help. Just realize it already that a hero isn't one who wins. A hero is someone who will do anything to save others and will always choose the right thing even if the entire world is against him. He then steps back. Bakugo stand up and tries to say something, but Izuku yells, everyone get back, villains are here. He said this as a portal opened and 2 bird-like creature walked out with 3 humans, a person with hands placed on his body, another a very tall one with tattoos on his head and an axe similar to the axe Thor talked about, and finally a woman in green dress and blonde hair who had glowing hand who looked at Izuku and smirked. We left off with Izuku telling everyone to get back as there was a villain attack, as we saw 5 people walk out of a portal, being 2 Nomus, one being the USJ one and the other covered in a black sludge being the Hood Nomu whom Endeavor fought, Shigaraki and 2 Asgardians. Now we pick up with Shigaraki talking, so this is the USJ and All Might is here, good, now we can kill you. You see All Might, these 2 birds were made to kill you and these 2 Asgardians are here to kill your son. All Might says, you won't succeed, villain. Why? Because I am here. As All Might was about to jump in the battle, Izuku stops him, saying, Dad, you will take on the bird creatures. One of them is covered by a symbiote. Dad, I want you to kill the creatures as soon as possible, but leave the symbiote. All Might and Aizawa says, we can't kill them. Izuku with a face of pity and sadness says, they were once humans and now they are made into monsters. They are in pain, they are begging to be relieved. We have to save them and that's the only way. All Might sighs, I will do it. What will you do? Izuku while preparing a rune barrier and places it on his class and 13 saying, no one will be able to get to them even with teleportation. And now Aizawa, you handle the small thugs while I handle the Asgardians. Aizawa says, fine, just stay safe, problem child, as he charged at the normal thugs while All Might jumps to fight the Nomus, while Izuku tells the class, stay here, you will be overpowered if you go out. Now I am also going, he said as he joined the battle and charged at Scourge. Scourge throws the axe towards Izuku at very high speed. Izuku barely dodges the axe as the axe cut his cheeks, as Izuku then goes to his side and hits him with the hammer in the face, sending him flying into the wall, and he then turns his attention to Enchantress and is about to send lightning at her and almost succeeds, but the lightning hit a barrier and stopped. Izuku was about to hit the barrier with the hammer to crack it, but his hand was caught by Scourge, who throws Izuku away and asks Enchantress if the boosting spell is ready. Enchantress says, Yes, now you will keep on getting stronger the more I keep channeling the power. Scourge says. Good. Then he calls the axe back and swings it at Izuku. Izuku blocks the axe with the handle of Mjolnir and then use Black Whip to hold Scourge by the arm and swing him at All Might, saying, "Dad, I have a ball for you." All Might then pushes the Nomu back and kicks Scourge back at Izuku. Izuku then fills Mjolnir with lightning and hits Scourge in the rib, breaking 2 ribs and sending him flying at the stairs. He then leaps at Scourge and lands a powerful hit on his back, knocking him down. Izuku thinks he knocked him out and head to Enchantress and hits the barrier but is unable to break it, so he quickly thinks that if he can't enter the barrier from any side he can still enter it from the ground, so he leaps up and throws the hammer in the ground and is about to call it from underneath Enchantress and hit her, but he is tackled by Scourge. They get into a wrestling match and Izuku and Scourge are going hard at it like All Might and the Nomu from the cannon, but Scourge keeps on getting stronger, so Izuku uses 100% lightning charged smash and hits Scourge back. Then he runs at him and Scourge gets up and runs at Izuku. Izuku then jumps on Scourge and uses his as a platform to do a front flip over the barrier placed by Enchantress, and as he was directly above the barrier he holds his hand out calling Mjolnir. As Mjolnir came out of the ground beneath Enchantress, it hit her and knocked her out, stopping the boosting spell. Seeing this, Shigaraki runs away. Izuku then turns towards Scourge and he goes beside him and he pulls his fist back and uses 100% One for All and lighting combined with super speed and is about to hit Scourge in the chest. Now I want to say something. The thing is, All Might and Izuku never use super speed in attacks, they only use super strength, but if they also use the speed the attack becomes more powerful as the mass increases, and so does the force, so just wanted to say this. Now before Izuku hits Scourge, let's go back to the beginning of the fight and look at it from All Might's perspective. As All Might jumped in the battle and headed for the USJ Nomu first, and he first used a Detroit smash to the chest but it did nothing, but All Might quickly realized that the back enlarged like a balloon, so he must have shock absorption, so All Might thought, I can overload the or find another weakness. So All Might tries punching it in the face and sees that it was extra protective of his face, so he put 2 and 2 together and came up with the idea to destroy its brain. So he guts punch the USJ Nomu and prepares as the symbiote Nomu attacked All Might with shape-changing weapon made with the sludge of the symbiote. All Might also uses Black Whip and throws the Nomu by grabbing him by the neck. The USJ Nomu jumps on All Might and All Might tries to throw him off. He suddenly hears Izuku saying, "Dad, I got a ball for you," as he sees Scourge flying towards him. All Might then pushes the Nomu off and then kicks Scourge back towards Izuku. Then getting back at the USJ Nomu and uses Black Whip, creating claws, and stabs the Nomu in the head, killing it, saying, "I am sorry I couldn't save you," and then gets in a fighting stance to fight the symbiote Nomu. And the symbiote Nomu ran towards All Might and they both punch each other in the face and they both fly away, and then they both get into an brawling contest until both are knocked to different edges of the USJ. Then All Might grabs the ground in front of him and catapults himself at the Nomu, and the Nomu runs at All Might on all 4 limbs, and as they get ready to throw a punch and their fists are about to collide, Scourge flies between their fists and get punched in both sides of the face, getting knocked out, and due to the force of the punch a large noise was created, getting the symbiote off the Nomu as sound and fire are its 2 weakness. All Might then hears Izuku calling out for him as he threw Scourge's axe at All Might, saying, "Finish him." All Might grabbed the axe, spun around to create momentum and swung it, bringing it down into the high-end Nomu's skull, killing it. As the Nomu dies it says, "Thank you" to All Might, who lowers his head in shame. Then Izuku looks at the symbiote and asks, "What's your name?" The symbiote replies saying, "Venom." Izuku then says, "I will let you go only on one condition: you help someone become a good hero." Venom promises as Izuku just spared his life. Then Venom slithers away. Around the same time Aizawa comes back after taking care of the villains, saying, "Good job you two." Both Izuku and All Might sit down as this was the hardest they had to try. I know Izuku has much more strength than Scourge and the Nomus combined, but he needed to hold back as to not kill someone, so he was fighting with a limit on himself. Literally everyone in the class was shocked upon seeing the level of power they both displayed. Then the other teachers arrive as this fight was broadcasted by the media helicopter. They capture the villains and Izuku informs everyone who these 2 people are and that they need to hold them in a maximum security prison, and he also handed the guards 6 runes and said, "Place 1 on each wall of the cell of the girl, this will stop her from using her magic." The guard says, "Thank you." Then they leave with the villains, and as they were about to grab the axe Izuku steps in saying, I'll be taking that axe belonged to Thor and he wanted me to retrieve it. The heroes then look at All Might for confirmation. Who says, let him keep it. Then the heroes hand the axe to Izuku. Izuku while walking with the axe says, man, I wish I had a pocket dimension for weapons. As he said this, the armed guards absorb the axe, as Izuku just laughing lightly says, problem solved. Then they head back to class who were being put on the bus. Izuku joins them and says, hey dad, I want to have a meeting with all the teachers and the principal tomorrow at lunch. Okay. All Might says, I can arrange that. Izuku says, good, now I'll see you at home. All Might then waves as Izuku and the class leave. The bus then drops them all off at UA where they all praise Izuku for the way he fought. Bakugo steps up and says, I am sorry for the way I treated you. I know I am stupid and I am nothing basically in this world, just another person. Izuku hugs him and says, you're awesome in your own way, now just be careful of other people's feelings. Okay. Bakugo nods his head. Izuku then says, so shall we get going? It's already been a long day, I will drop you off. As he says this, he lifts Mjolnir up and teleports each and everyone to their home. He then says, goodbye, to Momo last, and as he was about to leave, Momo kisses him. Izuku shockingly kisses back. After a solid minute they break the kiss and Momo says, Izuku, I know you have a lot of responsibility, just be careful. Okay. She said this while panicking. Izuku hugs her to calm her down. Then calmly in a reassuring voice says, I will now go. Your parents might be worried. After seeing Momo enter her home, he went to his and opened the door to see his mom run up to him and hug him and checking if he was fine, and after seeing no injury she sighed and sat down with Izuku saying, that fight was cool and awesome, but I was worried about you both. Now what do you want to eat? Izuku smiling says, Katsudon my fav. Inko then walks off to the kitchen saying, of course I will prepare it in a few minutes. Izuku then had dinner, and while eating Izuku saw something on the news which made him smile. It was a report about a vigilante taking out two thugs and that the only information about the vigilante was his name which he had left at the crime scene, introducing himself as Venom. Izuku chuckled at this saying, already huh? His mom asks concerned, already what? Izuku says, it's nothing. He then finished his dinner and went to sleep. The next 2 days were off for the students, but the teachers and Izuku met for a meeting. In the meeting Nezu asks, so why have you asked for this meeting, Izuku? Izuku says, I think we have a traitor among the students. Everyone was shocked, and asked Izuku, why do you think this, except Aizawa and Nezu? Then Aizawa steps up saying, the info was only given to the students and staff members so they wouldn't have any idea All Might would be there at that day and at that time without an informant. Nezu says, yes, you are right, but how do we find who the traitor is? Izuku says, I have an idea. I can scan the mind of everyone and see if they are the traitor, and if they turn out to be innocent then it is possible an enemy of Thor was helping them with magic or future seeing powers or a quirk which could help them. We don't have to care about anything if there is no traitor, as we can do nothing about the aforementioned abilities. After that they made a plan for Izuku to check for the traitor during the sports festival. Izuku nodded. After that he stood up saying, thank for your time, I will take my leave. As he was leaving All Might called him saying, I would like you to meet someone, she's the daughter of my friend from America, her name is David Shield, they own the Shield Industries. Izuku shocked asked, wait, as in the richest person alive David Shield, who is working on an iron suit to help his daughter become a hero? Yes, that David. Izuku then excited says, then what are you waiting for, introduce me. All Might replied, calm down my boy, they are both currently in the support room setting up for Melissa as she is joining the support course so she could help your class with gadgets and become a hero herself. That's cool. Izuku replied, we're here. All Might said as he knocked the door. The door was opened by a blonde girl about as tall as Bakugo and greeted All Might with a hug saying, Uncle Toshi. All Might hugged back saying, it's good to see you too, Melissa. After breaking the hug All Might says, oh, this is my son Izuku. Melissa holds out her hand towards Midoriya and says, hi. Izuku shakes her hand and says, hi, it's a pleasure to meet you. Melissa says, likewise, now shall we get inside, I want to show you guys my suit. Izuku excitedly says, yes please, with a nerdy smile on his face. They then walked in to see David working on the suit, giving it some final adjustments. Then he stepped out saying, hey Toshi, how are you? Looks like your injury was healed. All Might says, yay, I feel more alive now. By the way Izuku, David and Melissa both know about Alpha. Izuku says, "Oh, so Melissa, will you be joining us in the sports festival?" Izuku asked. Melissa replied saying, "Yes, I will also be participating in the festival. Nice, I get to test the technology you guys are creating, and if you ever want something I can get you something from Asgardian vaults," Izuku says. Melissa says, "Really? Well, if you want, can you get me something that can absorb any vibration and nullify the attack, not causing any damage to the person?" Izuku says, "Well, there is a ore of vibranium there, but the process of creating something from that ore is highly toxic." Melissa says, "We will handle it, so can you bring the ore here?" Izuku says, "Sure," and goes to the armory in the ruins of old Asgard, which only he could access, and gets the vibranium ore for Melissa and gives it to her. After giving her the ore, he asks, "So what will you make from this?" Melissa says, "I would make a round shield for Aizawa so he could fight with the Nomus and handle different attacks, and if I am correct no one should be able to break it, but it still can be cut into pieces. Now I will get back to work." After that, Izuku while walking tells All Might that they should install dorm system in the school. All Might says, "Nezu is already on it." Izuku says, "Good," but he suddenly hears Thor's voice saying, "It's time." Izuku understands it and tells All Might, "Dad, it's time." All Might sighs and says, "You can use the area behind Ua, I will talk to Nezu." "But what about Gorr, won't he be a problem?" Izuku says, "He won't make his move until the summer break, I know it. Now I will do it quickly, then we could go back home." Izuku grabs his hammer and flies to the backside of Ua and summons a bit storm and uses his earth manipulation, and when the storm ends, there it was the castle of Odin behind Ua. Then Izuku lands on the balcony of Thor's room, and All Might soon arrives saying, "Nezu had no problem with this being here." Izuku says, "Good, now just have to bring the gods back." All Might says, "Yeah, I just hope everything goes all right so I get to spend time with my family after hero work." Izuku says, "Don't worry, Dad, even if you die I will bring you back, as when you rise to the levels of a god death just becomes just a word. Now let's just enjoy the sunset." Last time we left off with Izuku recreating Asgard and him letting Venom escape, and he also defended the USJ with All Might and Aizawa while Bakugo and Izuku made up and are back to being friends. Now it's the same day as the USJ attack, and we see Venom crawling around the city looking for a perfect host who has the heart of a hero. After hours of searching, he finds a person who tried saving a girl from some people but was hurt in the process, and then the thugs ran off while the girl was laying near him unconscious. The man had lost an arm and was now bleeding out in an alleyway while saying, "I didn't have a quirk, my whole life was cursed, I was denied a place in the hero schools, but I now die knowing that I saved a girl." He said this while coughing blood. He then closed his eyes but opened them back again when he felt something slithering over his body. It was Venom, who started covering his body and was healing him. He also grabbed his arm and attached it back in its place. After fixing his body, Venom went inside him and hid himself. The man then stood up and was shocked as to what happened, but suddenly a face popped from his shoulder and spoke, "My name is Venom, I am a symbiote and I came here from another planet. I was tasked to help someone become a hero in exchange for my life." The man then says, "So an alien, huh?" Venom replies, "Yes, now I was tasked to help someone become a hero, and I heard you wanted to become one, so we both have the same intentions. I will help you and you let me live in you. Do we have a deal?" "Yes," the man said. Then Venom says, "Good," while smiling, and asks, "What is your name?" "Yoshi Yahika," the man replied. "Good, Yoshi, we will be known as the hero Venom now." Venom said this as he retreated back into his body. Suddenly Yoshi says, "But I don't have a license, neither I can apply for a hero school, so what do we do?" Venom then talks to him saying, "We can be a hero who does thing by himself, so a vigilante?" asked Yoshi. Venom said, "If that is the word for it, then yes, but now take the girl to the police station so she can report what happened." They did that, and the police then asked him a few questions, then they left. Yoshi went to his home and said, "So Venom, what's your abilities?" Venom answers, "I can shoot tendrils out of my body, climb any surface like a spider. I can also produce a web which you could swing around with, and I have extra senses. I also increase your strength and durability. My only weakness are loud noises and fire." Yoshi says, "That's awesome. By the way, what do you eat? I suppose since you are a living creature you eat something?" he asked Venom. Venom replies, "I need to consume meat or chocolates." Yoshi then says, "So I should buy chocolates?" Venom replies saying, "Yes, now do you want to get to work? We can track those thugs down and capture them." Yoshi says, Sure, but don't we need a costume? Venom says, when we get into action just say mask on and I'll cover your entire body with myself and protect you. Cool, replied Yoshi. Then they went out and Yoshi went around the area. He found them first and after looking around he found them both and followed them to an abandoned warehouse. He then got near the window and looked inside. Seeing both of them chilling in the warehouse, he then softly said, "Mask on," and jumped inside while Venom covered him. He then growled at the two. The thugs were scared. One of them tried to slash Venom with his quirk, which allows him to create his arms into bladed. He was slashing at Venom while the other villain was using his quirk to try and grab Venom. But Venom kept on dodging and after he reached the wall he let the first thug stab him. The thug said, "I got him," but suddenly Venom grabbed him by the neck and says, liver, eyes, pancreas, the heart, so many snacks, so little time." He said this as he licked the thug's face, scaring him. He opened his mouth to scare him more but was hit in the back by the other thug. Venom knocked the first thug out and then he grabbed the second thug after turning back and knocks him out by throwing him at the wall. He then webbed the two thugs and called the cops to that location and left before the cops arrived. They only found the thugs tied up and knocked out with a sign on one of them reading, "Venom was here." This was placed into the news which everyone saw, and while going home Yoshi also saw this and smiled and then went back home after buying chocolates for Venom. He then started his vigilante career from that day. This is what he looks like. Now let's step away from Yoshi and introduce another character to the story. On the day of the entrance exam we go to a man who possessed a great will and wanted to be a big villain and wanted to make a name and something for himself, but his quirk was bad for combat, as his quirk was that if he runs for 2 minutes his speed doubles over and over again, but if he was stopped the quirk would be cancelled. But his life changed one day, after being beaten by a villain who left the man broken both physically and mentally. He was cursing under his breath, "Only if I was unstoppable." Suddenly he was transported to a red realm. Suddenly he heard a red-colored monster called Sidorak. He says, "You Islan Agami, you wanted the ability to be unstoppable, right?" Islan says, "Yes, but who are you?" Then Sidorak replies saying, "I am one of the primordial magic users called Sidorak and I want you to be my champion. I offer you the Crimson Gem of Sidorak. It will give you the abilities to be virtually unstoppable. If you start running almost nothing can stop you." Islan then asks, "You said a champion, what for?" Sidorak says, "There are 7 more primordial magic users and since we can't fight each other or enter your dimension we pick the champions we want to represent us. When that fight takes place and if you win the world will be yours." Islan then says, "I accept. Now where are the other champions?" Sidorak replies, "No one else has been picked yet, so you have time to test your abilities out. Now go and remember not to use any other power beside mine." Islan says, "Yes sir." He then left and arrived at the alley. He then was about to think, "Wait, was that a dream?" But he heard Sidorak's voice say, "No it wasn't. Now go to the forest and test out your abilities." Islan goes to the forest and trains. He decided to run at a mountainside, which was like a wall. He started walking and when he reached the wall he started going through it without even trying. He then excitedly says, "Yes, I am truly unstoppable." After that he laid low for a few days until the day Izuku recreated Asgard. He then decided to go back and be a villain. He also gave himself a codename, the Juggernaut. We start off with Izuku and All Might at the top of the castle. Seeing a news helicopter arrive, the reporter get off the helicopter and ask Izuku, "What was this thing?" Izuku answers saying, "This is the castle of Asgard and I will be bringing the gods back, but don't worry, it will only be temporary." The reporter then says, "Oh, that's okay, we just wanted to give people news that it was not a threat." After this the reporter leave and Izuku heads down in the city with his father to go on patrol. All Might wanted Izuku to get used to it and also that Izuku can find the hosts of the gods. For those who don't know, when the gods were dying Odin created hosts for the gods all around Japan to help them come back to life early. While on patrol Izuku and All Might hear a radio dispatch asking for backup as an unstoppable beast has been tearing through the city. By the way, it's night time. All Might and Izuku rush to that area and arrive to see a trail of destruction. Buildings with All Might-sized holes in them as if someone ran through them. At that moment they see a person as big as All Might run at them in some sort of armor. Izuku tries reading his mind but is blocked out by the helmet. Izuku then tells All Might, "Prepare to punch him." Both All Might and Izuku run at him with one for all and punch the villain, but the villain didn't even flinch as he just grabbed the two and threw them off. He then rammed All Might as All Might was trying to stand up. He then smashed All Might through buildings. Izuku, seeing this, places a barrier and extends it to be 2 kilometers in diameter. How this barrier works is that whoever Izuku doesn't want inside the barrier would be safely carried out of the barrier, as they will be covered by a smaller layer of barrier around them which can heal the injured. So people who were in the rubble and people who were going to get in the way were sent out, leaving only All Might, Izuku, the villain, and pro-heroes like Eraser and Endeavor. They then started fighting the villain, but to no avail. All Might and Izuku couldn't hurt him or hold him back with Black Whip. Endeavor had no effect with his fires and Eraser could not cancel his quirk. The villain then says, "I am the Juggernaut, the unstoppable villain, no one can defeat me." The news captured it. Izuku then calls his hammer, replying, "Well, let's try this." As he shoots lightning at Juggernaut, but he just walked though it. Izuku then hits the Juggernaut in the chest with Mjolnir, but was blown back by a shockwave created by the clash, as Juggernaut still did not stop. Now All Might runs behind the Juggernaut, and when he stopped he holds Juggernaut in a headlock and tells Endeavor to hit him. Endeavor starts hitting Juggernaut, who only laughed and was about to hit Endeavor, but suddenly All Might and Endeavor and Aizawa were floating in the air and were covered in a layer of energy just like the barrier. As they saw Izuku stand up and spinning his hammer, he shouted, "Juggernaut, let's see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an unmovable object." The people who were watching the news were scared, as many scientists had said that if theoretically an unstoppable force met an unmovable object, it would create a singularity and destroy everything. Izuku then charges Mjolnir with lightning, and as Juggernaut started running at him, he threw Mjolnir at him, and as the hammer and Juggernaut collide, everything except the Juggernaut, Izuku, Mjolnir and the 3 pros was vaporized inside the barrier. This is what the blast looked like. And when the smoke cleared, Juggernaut was lying on the ground and Mjolnir was hit backwards, so in this clash the unstoppable force was stopped and the unmovable object was moved backwards. Everyone saw this, cheered as the villain was finally stopped. He then releases All Might, Endeavor and Aizawa. Izuku also places Juggernaut in a rune cuffs, cutting his connection to the power to Sidorak. Izuku then lifts the barrier and calls Mjolnir to himself and used the earth manipulation to recreate everything that was destroyed. Basically he fixed all the houses and every item inside. Endeavor says, "All Might, you have a good relationship with him. I wish I could have had the same relationship with my family." Izuku then looks at Endeavor and reads his memory and sheds a tear. He says, "Don't worry sir, I will help Shoto get on the right path, you just focus on being your true self." Endeavor then says, "You will do that for me?" Izuku says, "Yes." Endeavor then hugs him, saying, "Thank you." As he cried a bit, Izuku then says, "Now I had cut the footage of you hugging me, so now let's get the villain to Tartarus prison." They nod and take him to the guards, who will take them back, and as the guard sees the runes they ask Izuku if this was another Rouge Asgardian. Izuku says, "No, this was a human, but he somehow was channeling magical energy." The guard then says, "Thank you for stopping him." Izuku says, "No, I only did what was right and these guys also helped a lot," he said, pointing at the 3 heroes. The guard then walks off with Juggernaut and tells Izuku, "Be careful, hero." This makes Izuku smile as he puts up a thumbs up. Then Izuku goes to his dad and says, "Endeavor, can you do me a favor?" Endeavor nods and asks, "What do you need?" Izuku says, "If you ever have a run-in with Venom, don't use your fire, it's one of its weakness." "Kid, I don't understand, why wouldn't I use my fire on him?" Izuku replies saying, "Venom is an alien symbiote who I let go to help us, as many more symbiote will arrive on this planet and he can break them free from their king's control and they can help us." Endeavor then says, "Alright, I won't go after him, but we will still put up a search party. Him is to make the villain seem we are after him and to make the people think we are against vigilantes." Izuku says, "Great," and asks Aizawa if he could get Venom a spot on the provisional license exam. Aizawa nods and says, "I will try to get him a spot with you guys. The exam would be 1 week after the sports festival." Izuku then says, "So good, I will contact him in the meantime and inform him about this." Then he flies off looking for Venom. He searches the town and then the city of Mustafar, but he doesn't find anything, so he decides he will use the formula the night before the exam to look through the entire country. He then heads back home and sneaks in through the window, not wanting to deal with his mom right now. He sleeps and wakes up in the morning and looks at the table to see a terrified All Might and an angry Inko with floating hair. Izuku gulps as he walks forward. As he gets closer, his mother slaps him and pulls his collar, saying, "Why did you sneak in last night? I was so worried about you." Izuku, trying to calm her down, hugs her and says, "Sorry mom, but I was tired and wanted to talk in the morning." Inko then lets go and says, so your mood is important than me. Inko then has tears in her eyes. Izuku then goes on his knees and says, that's not what I meant, I just wanted to get my mind clear before talking, please understand. Inko then stops crying as All Might comforts her. Inko then suddenly runs to the washroom and starts throwing up. She then comes out after finishing and whispers something in All Might's ears which made All Might cry as he hugs her. Izuku then starting to felt like he is third wheeling, so sits down, eats at super speed and goes to his room, changes his clothes to his uniform and leaves for school while All Might and Inko dance slowly in the living room. Izuku then arrives at his classroom and enters it, sitting beside Momo and greeting her. She greets back with a smile and keeps on looking at him. Izuku notices this and says, you can watch me later but now focus please. Momo does so as Aizawa walks in and he says, problem children, today you will be selecting a class representative. Everyone cheers saying, finally something normal. Aizawa activating his quirk says, shut up, now after you select the class representative I want Izuku to train you guys for the sports festival, and people who don't want to be trained by Izuku can train themselves. The class nods. Aizawa says, good, as he goes in his sleeping bag. The class then says that they should be the class representative, but suddenly Iida stands up and says, we should vote to decide who the class representative are. Everyone says, that's a great idea. After that they vote and the person with most points is Izuku, followed by Momo. Bakugo stands up saying, who the hell voted for the damn nerd? Izuku looks smiling and says, Bakugo, calm down. But Bakugo says, whoever voted for the nerd raise your hand. 17 students raised their hand except Izuku, Shoto and Bakugo, but after seeing everyone Bakugo also raised his hand and said, you thought I will actually be angry. Izuku said, I knew you were joking, that's the only reason you are here alive. Bakugo gulped at the response and stayed quiet. Then Izuku says, so Shoto, you voted for Momo just like me, huh? Shoto doesn't say anything and just ignores him. This causes everyone to look at Todoroki. Momo asks Todoroki, why did you vote for me? Todoroki replied, saying you are the smartest here and an overall better candidate. Izuku with this goes towards Todoroki and whispers in his ear saying, I know you are just looking for Momo's attention, but I am warning you, back off, she's with me. He then walks away, but Todoroki says, we'll see about that. Aizawa then, wanting to break tension, says, well, now whoever wants to be trained by Izuku go to the training ground. Todoroki is the only one who refuses, so Aizawa says, then you can go home and prepare for the festival. The next 2 weeks would be off, but those being trained by Izuku can come to the school ground now. Class is dismissed. Izuku then says, okay, everyone except Momo go to the felad. They all leave except Momo, who asks Izuku, why did you ask me to stay? Izuku says, stay away from Todoroki, his intention doesn't seem good to me, and also tomorrow I'll come to meet your parents. Momo says, finally I can tell Dad about you. Izuku says, don't do that, let's surprise him and tell your mom to not say anything about me. Momo nods. Then they walk to the field. There Izuku told everyone to stand in a line next to one another. They all do so. Izuku then asks Iida to walk in front. Iida does so. Izuku then says, I will give you this equation. It is called the Speed Force equation. It will make you unbelievably faster for a short period of time as after you say it. Iida then questions, what is the Speed Force? Izuku then says, that in the DC multiverse a man named Barry Allen was struck by lightning, and due to some chemicals an energy pool which spread throughout time and space, and it made its way to other multiverses as well. This allowed Barry Allen and other people to run at speeds far exceeding speed of light without and backdraws of physics. Now many people also got this ability by gaining a connection to Speed Force, and they draw energy from it, but Barry Allen generates the Speed Force when he runs, and I think you have the best chances of creating a direct connection to the Speed Force, so you would practice on that. Iida then says, thank you, and walks off while memorizing the Speed Force equation. Izuku then called up Sue and told her that her tongue is 50 times stronger than a normal person's strength, and said, so if you cover your arms with our tongue this will give you a huge strength boost in fights, so I want you to work on that. She then walked off, and Izuku called Kaminari and Kirishima. He then told them both, you both use your quirk at the fullest from the start, why not use smaller percentage? So Kaminari, you could use a few volts instead of a million, and Kirishima, why don't you just focus all of your hardening at one spot which is about to take the impact, or the one which you will use to attack, you can stock all the hardening in one spot. Due to this, The two then walked away impressed by his idea. He then called Uraraka and said, Uraraka, I want you to try and change the direction of objects you touch. I know when you use your quirk you want to make object float, so why don't you try to change their gravity to the side, causing them to fly off? You could also use this to fly. Uraraka said, I never thought of this, I need to work on this. Then she walks off. Then at the end Momo walks up too. Izuku then tells her, you need to know the molecular structure of an object and its functioning to make it so. Here, take this. He said this as he placed his hand on her chest, not on the side but in the middle, and shares the nigh omniscience about objects, allowing Momo to know the molecular structure of anything she wants to create. Then Izuku says, now just work on your timing and thinking, so let's play chess. The rest of the class was also helped by Izuku. We then skip to Endeavor going to meet his wife at the hospital. He walks in her room and is greeted by Rei Todoroki, who walks up to him and says, I am sorry. Endeavor just lifts her up and hugs her. Rei hugs Endeavor back. Then he asks, so did the illness get cured? She says, yes. Then adds on saying, we can be a family finally. Okay, so guys, I am giving Rei an illness in this one in which she would remember things incorrectly, and she herself suggested to be put in the hospital as to not cause any harm to the children. Shoto was a bit affected by her illness and started to believe Endeavor hit her and was abusing them, but in fact Endeavor was just being a bit harsh as to prepare his children to be ready for this society and become people even greater than the #1 hero. This caused Shoto to think Endeavor was training them to surpass All Might. Now let's go back to the story. Rei returns home with Endeavor. Natsuo then speaks up saying, why are you with that abuser? Rei tells him not to speak to his father this way. Natsuo says, but he abused all of us in some way or another. Rei replies saying, no he didn't, I had an illness which made me think he did that, so it isn't his fault, now apologize. Natsuo does so. Then they all talk and they make up. After that Shoto arrives and sees the thing. Endeavor tries making up to him, but Shoto says, I will put everything aside, but you have to help me do something. Endeavor says, yes, anything. Shoto has a smirk on his face. We then cut to a blind man in an alleyway suddenly starting to glow and transform into Heimdall, the guard of the Bifrost. Heimdall has the ability to watch the entire universe. He can see anything that isn't hidden with magic. He makes his way to the new castle of Asgard, and when he arrives there he blows a horn. This grabs the attention of Izuku. As he flies up there he then sees Heimdall walk up to him. After getting a certain distance near Izuku, Heimdall kneels, putting his sword in a submissive manner, and says, my lord, I am Heimdall and I am at your service. Now we start off at the next day with Izuku going over to meet Momo's parents. He flies to the main door and presses a button and says, I am Izuku Midoriya and I am here to meet Mr. and Mrs. Yaoyorozu. A voice then comes from the speakers saying, come in. Just as the gates open, Izuku quickly goes to the mansion and knocks on the door, which is opened by Momo, who greets him saying, you're finally here. Izuku responds with, sorry if I was late. Then just as he was about to step in he hears a voice familiar to him say, so I just sigh here and we're done. Izuku quickly realized who the person was and rushes past Momo using his full cowl into the room and sees Endeavor about to sign a paper. He quickly used Black Whip and his telekinesis quirk to stop Endeavor hand mere cm away from the paper. Endeavor quickly looks up to see who interrupted him and saw Izuku and asked, Izuku, what are you doing here? Izuku just quickly sighs and says, sorry for stopping you, but what are you doing here? Endeavor, sensing worry in Izuku's voice, says, I am here to fix an arranged marriage between Momo and Shoto. Izuku then sighs and is happy and asks, if that paper he was about to sign would have finalized everything. Endeavor replies saying, yes, but why were you so worried? Izuku answers saying, me and Momo are dating and I warned Shoto about staying away yesterday, but looks like he didn't listen. Endeavor was shocked to hear this and stands up saying, I am sorry, I didn't know. Izuku smiling says, it's not your fault, Uncle Enji. Just then Endeavor says, by the way, thank God you stopped me, because if I had signed that paper it would have been impossible to cancel the marriage. Now, I am making it so that once both parties have agreed to an arranged marriage it can't be undone. After that Endeavor left saying his goodbye to the family, but not before apologizing to Momo for his son's behavior. When Endeavor left, Momo's father stands up and walks over to Izuku and stands in front of him and introduces himself as Kenny Yaoyorozu and his wife as Meme Yaoyorozu. Izuku almost laughed at the last part, thinking, who names their kid Meme? but was smacked on the head by Momo. Then Izuku bowed down and introduced himself by saying, "It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. I am your daughter's boyfriend, Izuku Midoriya." Kenny tells Izuku, "Who would have thought my future son-in-law will be the god of thunder and the son of the #1 hero himself?" Izuku took it as a compliment and replied, "Well, I didn't think I would be able to find someone like your daughter in the entire universe, the other realms included." Kenny just chuckled as he told Momo, "I like the kid, why don't you show him around? I have to sort out the problem from earlier." Momo just said, "Hi," then walked off by dragging Izuku along the floor. The parents saw this and smiled, then went to talk. Kenny first said, "I think we should have 2 bodyguards to protect Momo from that Shoto kid. He seems obsessed with her, and make sure that they have quirks effective against his half-hot quirk." Meme just nodded and said, "I will interview people tomorrow morning." Now we cut off to Momo talking Izuku to her room. POV Momo. I closed the door behind me and told Izuku, "Stand here," while pointing near a table. Izuku said, "Okay," and stood there. Then I took a deep breath and asked him something. "Don't you think we are going too fast? And one more thing, since the day I met you I never felt a doubt about anything with you. Normally people doubt themselves, that they aren't deserving of the other and aren't good enough, or will the other like them or not. Now I know you are doing something, just tell me what." Izuku looked at the floor and said, "I am a god now. That means I will live for millions of years, meaning I only have about 50 to 60 years with you, right?" I looked down and nodded. He then continued saying, "So due to that I want to spend all of it with you as much as possible. I did not want to waste 1 month or something thinking about whether you deserve me or not. I did not want to waste time, so I removed the doubts from your mind and let you think freely." I instantly looked at him and I was angry. He had manipulated me, even though he was just removing self-doubt, but he was pushing me to just be with him. I told him something I knew I was going to regret. I told him to leave and not. I said, "I need some time to think about this, but Izuku, don't think of this as an breakup, just a small break for me to adjust to this." Izuku looked up with tears in his eyes. He hugged me and said, "Thank you. I thought you wanted to break up with me." I was taken aback, but then I just rubbed his back and said, "It's okay, but you need to go now. I have to think about it now. Let's put this relationship on pause until the final exams." Izuku just said, "Yay, sure." Then he walked out and left. I then lied in my bed and thought, did I do the right thing? End of POV. Izuku was flying to Asgard to talk to Heimdall and possibly find more Asgardians. He then remembers last night. Flashback. Izuku was taken aback by Heimdall kneeling in front of him. Izuku quick got Heimdall up on his feet and asked, "You're Heimdall, right? The guardian of Asgard, right?" Heimdall looks up standing, says, "Yes, and I was awoken in this body which Odin had created for us to come back, this time cheating death and breaking the cycle of Ragnarok." Izuku looks at Heimdall with a confused look and asks, "What is the cycle of Ragnarok?" Heimdall says, "Ragnarok is the foretold end of Asgard that occurs time after time during the reign of Thor. This event has happened countless times. Odin has been trying to prevent it ever since, but was always unable to, so this time he changed the role of Thor and brought everyone back differently." Izuku looks down saying, "Interesting, I have to do some research about it. If I need more info I will ask you later. Now I need to go." Heimdall looks at him and says, "Yes, my lord." Then he stands at a ledge and looks over the UA campus in the city. Izuku then flies off to his house. End of flashback. Izuku arrives near the ledge where Heimdall was last night, only to find him gone. Izuku quickly thinks, maybe he got into a fight. As Izuku was about to run away, he hears a person run to him with Asgardian armor saying, "My lord, you are summoned by the king." Izuku quickly rushes through the halls to see that there are multiple people there. The entirety of Asgard was brought back seemingly overnight. When Izuku reached the throne room, he looked at the man sitting on the throne with a staff in his hand and an eye patch over one of his eyes looking down at him. This man was Odin, the Allfather. This is what he looks like. Now we skip over to a prison underwater covered by dragon-like creatures. The top of the prison was a rock circle in with a rune carved onto it. Inside the prison was a man who looked a lot like Odin, turning to look in a general direction and saying, "Oh, so Odin has returned on Earth. This is the opportunity I have waited for years to arrive, and now it's time for me to take my place as the real Allfather." The man then started laughing maniacally, and finishes his sentence by saying, "The world shall know, fear itself." "You're Odin?" asked Izuku. "Yes, I am Odin, the Allfather," answered Odin. Then Izuku was about to say something, but Odin waved his hand gesturing Izuku to stay silent. Izuku does so, then Odin speaks up saying, I am the king of Asgard until you turn 25 or reunite the 9 realms. Now on the topic, I can't stay on Earth, so you don't have to worry about the Asgardians being on Earth for long. I will leave as soon as the new Asgard is finished being built near Saturn, because as long as I stay here there will be problems. After a few seconds of silence, Izuku spoke up saying, What do you mean there will be problems? Odin looked up and then back at Izuku saying, The serpent is an ancient being whom I had trapped many eons. Eons means thousands of years ago under the ocean, and now that I am here he has been awoken. Now believe me when I say you don't want to fight him. This scares Izuku a bit, but he steps up saying, If he breaks out I will do everything in my power to stop him. Do we have a deal? Odin then says, Do as you please, but if the battle is a lost cause I will take you with me so we can at least have a last stand. Izuku nods and then looks back at Odin, who just says, You may leave now, you have a special class tomorrow, so go and do your thing. Izuku then walks out and flies out of the castle and arrives at his house. Upon entering, Izuku hears some crying from the kitchen and walks there to see his mom crying and All Might trying to console her. Izuku was about to say something, but he notices a pregnancy test kit on the counter. He walks up to it and looks at it and is shocked and angry upon seeing that it was positive. He then speaks up saying, So you came back after 14 years and under a year you get mom pregnant. Wow, so take it you will take another 14-year leave after 9 months. Izuku says, a bit irritated and a bit happy that he will have a younger sibling. All Might and Inko turn back to see Izuku standing there, and Inko is embarrassed and All Might is a bit scared and says, My boy, I will not leave. Okay, I did it that time because I was afraid, but now I know I don't need to be afraid. And aren't you happy about the fact you will have a sibling? Izuku smiles and says, Yay, I am beyond excited. I hope it is a girl so she could be the flower girl in my and Momo's marriage. But then Izuku remembered what happened and looked down and whispers to himself saying, If that happens. All Might then says, Okay, by the way, who did your meeting with the Yaoyorozu went? Izuku responded with a sigh, then looking down almost starting to cry saying, I fucked up dad, I fucked up hard. All Might puts his hand under Izuku's armpit lifting them up. Okay, it might sound weird, but I do this to someone when they are sad, because when someone has responsibilities it is considered a weight on their shoulder, so putting the hand under someone's armpit and lifting them up indicates that you are lightening the weight. Then All Might says, My boy, what happened? Izuku then speaks up while wiping his tears saying, Momo wants to take a break from the relationship. She didn't tell me for how long though. All Might then hugs Izuku and asks, Why did she do that? Izuku answers by saying, Well, she asked me if our relationship was progressing too fast, and I replied that I had removed all the doubt and worries she had so she could quickly choose yes or no. As you know, I will live for millions of years, so I wanted to spend as much time with her as possible, but she told me I played with her judgment. Izuku finished looking at All Might and All Might just stays silent. After a couple of seconds his mom speaks up. She tells Izuku that what he did was wrong. He stole the free will she had you without a thought, made the choice for her and didn't even let her think about it. It is just like controlling someone. As soon as she had the thought of liking you, you didn't let her have any other thought, and that is not how I raised you. Izuku looks down in sadness and guilt, then says, I will apologize to her tomorrow. All Might then tells Izuku, By the way, Aizawa loved the shield you gave him. He said he wanted to test the shield against your strength at 100%, so why don't we pay him a visit in the forest? He is already there. Now come on, it will also brighten your mood, All Might said with his trademark smile. Izuku nods, then takes All Might with him after telling his mom they would be back in a couple of hours at maximum. Time skip to the meeting. Aizawa in All Might's forest. Took you long enough, I was about to go sleep, says Aizawa with the shield in his hand. The shield looks like this. Sorry, we had a family issue, Izuku says. Aizawa sighs and says, Okay, now I just came here to have this tested out, so first try to break it by bending it with you full strength, Quirk and God alike. Izuku takes a breath and says, As you wish, then takes the shield and tries to crack or bend it with all of his power, but instead hurts his hand only, then lets go saying, That thing is truly quite durable, and now I want to hit it with Mew Hammer to see what happens. He then hands Aizawa the shield and says, Hold it up, here I come. He then jumps at Aizawa and brings his hammer down, striking the shield, but suddenly a big explosion occurs. Just like this, just avoid everything except the hammer hitting the shield. That was clearly something, kid, Aizawa says as he gets up with Izuku and All Might getting up, holding themselves due to the shockwave they took point blank. Izuku says, "That is a good shield sensei. Now if you don't mind I would like to go home and sleep. That blast gave me a concussion." Izuku then grabs All Might and teleports out, leaving Aizawa there, who says, "This is awesome, now let's take down some villains." He then goes to the city and does his job. Izuku and All Might just slept at home that night because they both had the concussion of their life. Time skip to next day. Izuku walks in class to see Shoto covered with bandages, possibly due to receiving beating from his mother and father. Izuku then notices a certain ponytail girl looking at him like she wanted to kill him. Izuku was feeling sad, but he was suddenly pushed by Aizawa in the class. Aizawa then speaks up saying, "Okay, listen here, problem children. You will meet the big three of UA today, so behave or I'll suspend you." With that, everyone stayed silent. After 5 more seconds of silence, Aizawa says, "You can come in now." With that, 3 students came into the room and then stood up. Izuku thought, "My first impression of them is that they have the entire circus here." The blonde was the clown, the blue-haired was the announcer, and the third one, who was like a less edgy elf, Sasuke. Izuku knows that Sasuke exists in a different multiverse, was that one guy in the group who does all the work but is too afraid to speak up. They then introduce themselves as Mirio Tagata, Najire Hado, and Tamaki Akajimi. I hope this is his name. Then Tamaki says his "I want to go home" line. After that, Mirio speaks up saying, "Okay, so that's that, now let's fight you all against me." The class erupted saying that it is a bad idea, but Aizawa cuts them off saying, "Just do it, okay, and Todoroki will not participate in this exercise due to his injuries. Now move it." The class make their way to the gym and they all get in a fighting position and get ready to battle it out, and just as soon as Aizawa says go, Mirio disappears into the floor. The only two who saw what happened were Ida and Izuku, since they both have super speed, so they also have slow motion vision by default. Izuku was pissed at what he saw. All of Mirio's clothes were on the ground and he was about to flash a girl, so Izuku searched around until he saw Mirio's head pop up from in front of Momo. Izuku quickly rushed there and kicked him in the face, sending him flying and seemingly knocking him out with one blow, sending him in the forest type area, and put his clothes there as well. Now this all happened under a nanosecond, so Mirio didn't even know Izuku was coming to attack him. Aizawa then speaks up saying, "Midoriya, why did you knock him out so quickly?" Izuku just turns to him and says, "Well, he was about to flash my girlfriend, so I kicked him out of the gym and into the trees and left his clothes with him." Hearing this, Momo jumps on Izuku and kisses him on the cheeks and says, "Thank you, Izu," but suddenly lets go and walks away angrily saying, "I didn't need your help, you bastard," and walked away. The entire class was surprised, even Aizawa, seeing how they were inseparable until today. He wondered, what happened yesterday to change them so much? But among the faces of confusion there were 2 faces of happiness, one being Izuku and other being Todoroki. Izuku puts his hand on his cheeks and slowly whispers, "I am still worthy of her love," and smiles to himself. Meanwhile, Todoroki has a shit-eating grin on him, thinking, "Finally I can have her. And oh, trust me, you bastard, I will make her happy. I will give her the life of her dreams. I will lay down my life for her. I will love her like a queen, and I will always make her happy, unlike you." After that, Mirio came back holding his jaw and asked Izuku, "Why did you kick me so hard?" Izuku replied with a scoff and said, "You were about to flash every girl here. If I wanted I could have filed a report against you with you being a sex offender and in jail, so next time use your hero costume for something like this." Mirio then asked for forgiveness from everyone saying, "I was just too excited to fight you all. I have heard amazing things from the teachers." Everyone forgives him after a while, and then they all ask the question that was on their mind saying, "Midoriya, what was that with Momo and you?" Izuku replied saying, "I messed up and now we are on a break, but she didn't say break up and even kissed me today, so I think we will come back after some time." The shippers then sighed and said, "The iceberg hit the ship but the ship survived. Oh, thank God." This made Izuku laugh with his friends, finally actually happy since the incident yesterday. Now on with the serpent. A few people were swimming down to the rune-shaped tomb guarded by sea dragons. The crew began fighting them. One of them burnt 3 dragons with his blue flames. This was a man with black trench coat and his body covered with burnt skin. The other was a girl who let herself get eaten by a dragon and then started to attack the dragon from the inside, killing it. The girl then came out and revealed herself to be a girl with blonde hair and 2 bangs. The last man being a person covered in hands who decayed 2 dragons with both hands. Then the group of 3 went to the seal and the man covered in hands touched the seal, decaying it and opening the tomb, and they all went inside to be greeted by old man. The old man looked at them and said, "Ah, Shigaraki, Dabi and Toga, nice to meet you, I was waiting for you all. Shigaraki and the crew then take off the swimming gear and Shigaraki speaks up saying, you contacted me telling you had a gift for us and you wanted us to work for you. The serpent then says, yes, that is what I intended. Now listen, I am much more stronger than AFO, so listen, you work for me and you will have the entire world because I have the power to do it, and as per your recruitment you will be given a hammer similar to the one which belonged to Thor but different at the same time. Now do you accept? Shigaraki, tempting at the thought of ruling the world with actual godlike powers, said, yes, I would love to work for you. The serpent smirks and says, then all three of you pick your hammers. While pointing to the hammers in the room, Shigaraki then goes to the hammer in the middle and stretches his hand nearing the hammer as black energy comes off from the hammer. Meanwhile Toga's hammer gives off red energy, meanwhile Dabi's hammer gives off white energy. And as soon as they lift the hammers they are suddenly transformed into something else. It was the last day before the sports festival. Izuku was sitting on his rooftop and meditating. He had been trying to access float, which was Nana's quirk. He wanted to use it as a backup if he ever needed to use both hands while midair, as Mjolnir requires one hand to hold it to fly. All Might came back up to the roof after he went to get a couple of drinks, a beach chair, some sun cream. When he arrived he saw Izuku floating a bit above ground. It was about half an inch to be exact. All Might called out to Izuku saying, good progress. This caused Izuku to end his meditation and fall down, but it wasn't much, so he just stood up and said, well, enjoy your sunbathing, I have some places to be. With that he said something under his breath and sped off, leaving trail of green lightning behind him. All Might then sees the same lightning everywhere throughout the city and is confused and thinks, if he was using OFA there would be wind pressure from the drag his body will generate, but there is none. It's like the air is not affecting him. I guess I will ask him later. Little did he know that Izuku was using the speed force to travel multiple times faster than light without experiencing any drag or setting off explosions. He went throughout the country, then he got bored, so he decided to go to the sun to check out his durability. It is said if you travel at a certain speed the air particles in front of your body will not have enough time to move and will get supercharged, and when they have enough charge they will cause a nuclear explosion. Times KIP. When Izuku reached the sun, Izuku lands on the surface and immediately sinks in. Then he flies back out and says, of course the sun is made up of plasma and plasma is liquid energy. You can't stand on it, but still I didn't receive any damage, so I can survive a trip to the core of the planet easily. That is awesome. Now I think I should go to every planet, then go and look for Venom. Pretty sure he would come out at night time. Izuku then did just that. He explored the entire solar system. He also found something shocking near Saturn. He decided to check it out. He arrived at the structure and saw that there were people working there to build something. He landed there and was met by some workers who came to him and bowed down. Izuku was confused until he saw Asgardian armor, and then he put two and two together and asked, this is the new Asgard which Odin has ordered to be constructed, right? One of the workers stood up and said, yes, my lord, it is. Izuku then said, good. Well, sorry for interrupting you, I was just passing by and no need to call me lord. Izuku is fine. The workers then all stood up and said, very well, Izuku. Izuku gave them a smile and said, well, I must leave, I have to talk to a person. I hope you guys have a fun time working, and if you need any help just call me. The workers nodded, and with that Izuku flew towards Earth and landed in a city where Venom was last seen. Izuku turned into his normal self. He was wearing a mask, just like everyone reading this should. While going outside, he then started walking in the city looking for any sign of Venom. He was walking rapidly until he heard his phone ringing. He saw that it was an unknown number but decided to pick it up and said, who's this? He got a grumpy voice replying saying, it's Endeavor, I got your number from All Might, come to my location, I have him. Izuku just to make sure asks, just to be clear, we are talking about the same him, right? Endeavor just replies with, yay, now come to my location. Izuku then sees the location Endeavor sent him and flies there. He arrives to see Endeavor with Ingenium and a man he doesn't recognize. Meanwhile the police was taking someone away. Izuku walks up to the unknown man and asks, are you Venom? The man turns and replies, yes, I am Yoshi Yahika, also known as Venom. Izuku then says, nice to meet you, Yoshi. By the way, who did the police take away? Ingenium then speaks up saying, oh, it was Stain, the hero killer. He attacked me, but before he could do any damage Venom came and stopped him. Izuku turned to Yoshi and said, really? I want to know how you did it. can you tell me and oh by the way what is your quirk Izuku? As he pulled out his Hero Analyses number 13 notebook and a pen from his wristbands. Yoshi gave a chuckle at Izuku's enthusiasm and said, I don't have a quirk, and as for your question on how I beat him, well, Ingenium can tell the part before I arrived and I will tell everything that happened after. Is that good enough? Izuku smiles and says, absolutely. I am making it so that those wristbands can store items in them. They are kind of like a pocket inventory, but you have to put stuff there to use it later. Storytelling. Ingenium's POV. I was doing my early night petrol as usual when I saw a figure atop a rooftop and decided to check it out because I thought maybe it was Venom, and Endeavor had asked us if we ever found Venom. We asked him to contact Izuku. So I did just that. I ran up the building and reached the top and went to talk to the figure, but before I could do anything the figure attacked me with a knife. I was able to dodge it. It was at that point I realized that the figure was actually Stain. He told me, another fake hero who came to die. Don't worry, I will cleanse this society from the likes of you fame whores. With that he attacked me rapidly and didn't give me a chance to get my balance back. It wasn't late before I was at the edge of the building. I panicked and he used that to attack me and hit me off the roof. Both him and I fell in this alleyway. I was stunned after falling from a height. I was trying to catch my breath, but Stain had already landed on me and was ready to stab me, but it was at that moment where Venom arrived. Venom's POV. I was jumping around looking for some people to take care of. It was peaceful until I heard a crash and decided to check it. I was on a rooftop. Looking over the alleyway, I just looked down and saw that it was the hero Ingenium in danger. I called the cops and told them, Sir, this is an emergency. Pro hero Ingenium is fighting the hero killer and is losing. Please send someone to help him. You can track my phone to get here. He said this mid-air while Venom had jumped down just as Stain was about to bring his sword down and shot some webs towards him, sticking to his sword and pulling him in for a kick to the face, which would have been able to knock out most, but Stain was surprisingly tough. He landed back and said, You're Venom, right? You're one of the real ones. You are helping people unlike this fake. I looked at him with a disgusted look behind my mask and said, Who are you calling fake? Ingenium helps people without a care about himself, and he also supports vigilantes who wants to help people. I think you should look at people before you make an opinion. With that I jumped at Stain and made a hammer from my body and attacked him, which he dodged, and that is exactly what I wanted. I used a tentacle from my shoulder to grab him and smash him between the walls multiple times, but don't worry, I was keeping his head secure so he won't have any brain damage. After a while I stopped because he was knocked out. I out him down and was going to capture him, but he sprung at me suddenly and stabbed me in the shoulder and quickly pulled the knife out and licked it. Just as he did that my body fell numb and I couldn't move. He tried to cut my head clean off with a slash of his sword, but luckily Venom moved my body on his own. Stain was quite surprised by this and said, You can move even after being paralyzed. You really are something. I won't kill you if you leave right in. But before he could finish, he was kicked in the back of the head by Ingenium, who was waiting for the perfect moment to catch Stain off guard and knock him out. Venom then moved my body and webbed Stain up. Then I was about to run away, but Ingenium called out to me and said, Izuku wants to meet you, just wait. I tried to run away, but Venom brought me down and said, Don't panic, Izuku is the one who realized me, so he must have something important to say. After that I stayed here. Then Endeavor arrived and we introduced ourselves, and while the police were taking Stain away, Izuku arrived. End of storytelling. So what can I do for you? Asked Yoshi. Izuku looked at him and said, Me and my class will be taking the provisional license exam next week. I have already got you a spot on the exam. This will make you a proper pro hero. Hearing this, Yoshi started crying. His dream was coming true. He will finally be a true hero. He wiped his tears and looked at Izuku and said, Thank you. I promise I will do my best. Izuku smiled at him and said, Looking forward to working with you. With that, Izuku went to his house to sleep because the sports festival was the next day. Times KIP. When Class 1A was in the lockers. Izuku was changing his clothes until he felt two people behind him. He turned around to find Momo and Todoroki. Todoroki first spoke up saying, Listen, even if you are a god, I will defeat you. Make Momo mine, and I will do this with only my right side to prove to that burning piece of garbage that I am better than his flames. Momo then spoke up saying, First of all, I will never be yours, daddy issues, and secondly, listen here, you little shit, while pointing at Midoriya, I will beat your ass to a pulp and win this festival, and I will not go back on my word. Izuku just looked at Shoto with hatred and said, kindly fuck off. Then he turned to Momo and looked at her with sorry eyes and said, I'm sorry, please give me another chance. Momo just sighed and said, we will talk this out at a cafe after I win the festival. Izuku just smiled and nodded. Then they heard Midnight calling everyone out onto the field. The same stuff as anime happens until the start of obstacle race. Izuku was using full cowling at 50% and was in a running position. As soon as Midnight said go, Izuku leapt out of the tunnel, and just as he got out, Todoroki went out of the tunnel while freezing everyone behind him. He was grinning and Izuku was having fun running until he heard the announcement in which Midnight said, the first person to cross the finish line is Iida Tensai and the person in second place is Momo Yaoyorozu. Hearing this, Izuku got a little agitated that he didn't get first and nor second, so he called his hammer and started running at super fast speeds and reached the finish line in a matter of just 1 second, and he ran so fast that the ground was torn by his speed. Seeing this, Todoroki was furious. He too decided to go into top gear and started creating ice at a much faster rate, getting himself 4th and Bakugo in 5th. The moment Izuku crossed the finish line, he went straight to Momo and asked, how did you get second? Momo just whistled and then said, I'll show you later. With that she walked off. When 32 people crossed, the race was ended and the top 32 were brought together and told that the next competition will search and destroy. This one had simple rules. There will be 2 teams of 16 players each. No quirks were allowed. Students were told they can only use weapons provided by the school. The weapons were assault rifles, snipers, light machine guns, pistols, rubber knives, rubber frag grenade, concussion grenade. Students could choose 1 primary weapon, 1 secondary, 1 lethal and 1 tactical. The red team was a bunch of extras. The blue team had Izuku, Ochako, Momo, Tokiyami, Kirishima, Bakugo, Shoto, Iida, Tetsu and finally Shinso. Shoto walks up to his team and says, listen, I know we are not on speaking terms, but this thing depends on teamwork, so we should put aside our difference for some time. Izuku smiled and said, I agree. With that everyone else also agreed. Then Midnight spoke up saying, okay kids, to win the bombers either have to plant a bomb on either side or side B and defend it until the bombs explode. And the defenders have to defuse the bombs. You can also win by killing every opponent, and whoever reaches 5 points first wins. 1 round is worth 1 point. To kill with AR you have to do 2 headshots or 5 torso shot or 10 leg shots, and as for sniper it is 1 shot 1 kill. Izuku then smiles and says, okay guys, I am taking a sniper and I am killing them all. Everyone was skeptical and about to say something, but Bakugo stopped them and said, let him go, he's a pro at this because he was a late bloomer, he trained with guns to protect himself. Hearing this, everyone agreed to let Izuku so the dirty work and just stay at the start. Okay, I will skip because Izuku just quickscoped them all. This how he did it. And after that, Midnight had announced the blue team the winners and all 16 had advanced to the final round, which was decided to be 1v1. Izuku looked at the screen and said, this is it. Now on to the story. So we were at the start of the 1v1 where Midnight had told everyone what the event will be. This is where the fun begins, Izuku said after the announcement, and saw that his first match will be against Shinso. After that he will have to face Shoto, and after that he will fight Iida, who will be a tricky opponent. Izuku got ready and walked to the room which was given to him to rest and prepare for the matches. After 15 minutes of waiting, Izuku was summoned to the arena to fight Shinso. He got there ready to fight Shinso. But before he could even move, Shinso decided to say something that it must be nice being the son of the #1 hero and having the powers of a god. You must be enjoying your life from the get-go, having a life full of riches and whatnot. Meanwhile I was labeled as a villain just because I had a quirk which people didn't like it. Izuku was getting angrier because he had also gotten Thor's temper as well. He replied to Shinso saying, really, well, let me tell you something. I lived my life without a father for 14 years and lived as a quirkless who was bullied for 12 years. You say you had a rough childhood, well, so did I, so I understand how you must feel, but using that to gain sympathy, that is just low-class move. Shinso was shocked and said, why isn't my quirk working? You should have been under my control right now. How are you still free from my control? Izuku just chuckled and said, well, I did some training to block telepathic attacks, so you've already lost. With that he ran at Shinso and pushed him out of the arena and said, you can improve and prove others wrong, but only if you try. He said this while offering a hand, which Shinso took happily, agreeing to what Izuku had said. Now it was the match between Shoto and Zero. Nothing major. Shoto won by creating a big-ass iceberg. Then Momo and Tokuyami's match, where just as Midnight said go, Momo created a lightsaber and attacked Dark Shadow, who could do nothing against a lightsaber which was hot and bright. Momo with this ran towards Tokuyami while fending off Dark Shadow. When she reached Tokuyami, she put the lightsaber to his throat as she said, "Do you yield?" Tokuyami just said, "I yield." With that, Momo advanced to the next round where she would fight Mina. Bakugo also advanced after beating Uraraka and also won his match against Kirishima. Now it was the most awaited match between Izuku and Shoto. They both walked on the arena and got ready for the fight, but before they started, Izuku said something with a smirk. "Use your full power, Todoroki, you can't win otherwise." Shoto just shouted, "Shut up," while sending a wave of ice at Izuku, who broke it with a single flick and then almost pushed Todoroki off the arena. Shoto was angry. He shouted saying, "Why are you interfering in my life, taking away the girl I love? I want to make her happy." "Unlike you." Izuku just looked at Shoto and said, "She loves me, she is happy with me, so shouldn't you be happy that she is happy?" Shoto looked down and it hit him hard that all he was doing was ripping her away from a person she loves, so he looks at Momo in the crowd and says, "I am sorry, Momo." Then he looked at Izuku, who looked like he wanted to say something, so Shoto spoke saying, "You want to say something else? Say it, I will listen." Izuku smiled and said, "Well, I wanted to say was that you should not hate your father. Even though he treated you badly, he only wanted you to be stronger so you could." Before he could finish, Shoto said, "Surpass All Might, right? He is putting his ambition on me. I don't want to be what he wants me to be." Izuku looked at Shoto and said, "He wants you to surpass All Might because he is the strongest hero, and the strongest can protect those close to them and save others as well. He wants you to be stronger than All Might because when he was a kid he lost his family to a villain and he wasn't strong enough to save them. That is why he wanted to be the strongest, because he thought that the strongest never loses and always protects people." Hearing this, Shoto looked back at his father with tears in his eyes, and he could see his father tear up as well. Shoto then looked back at Izuku and said, "Midoriya, you sure are a hero, saving me from a wrong path. Fine, I will use my fire because it is not his but mine, right?" Izuku just smiled and said, "Read my mind." Shoto then fired a lot of ice, covering the floor with only ice. Izuku saw this and smirked, thinking, "This is good. When he launches his fire, the hydrogen particles in the ice would supercharge and explode. This will give me an opening to read every mind in the stadium to find who the traitor is, as the explosion would distract them and leave their mind vulnerable to a mind read." With that, Shoto charged his fire, condensing it, and Izuku charged lightning in his body with OFA at 100%, and they both were ready to attack each other as friends, going all out. This scared Midnight, who told Cementos to create pillars, but as soon as the two launched their attack, breaking the pillars, and Shoto's fire did just as Izuku predicted, and in an instant he read everyone's mind and found the traitor, saying, "There you are." Then he went through the fire doing nothing to Izuku, as the only thing fire can do is burn, it can't push an object back. With this, Izuku walked through it and punched Todoroki in the guts, launching him out of the arena, and said, "GG Todoroki." Todoroki was knocked out and Izuku was standing on the arena, and the crowd was going wild, saying, "The top two heroes kids are just as good as them, if not better." This made both Endeavor and All Might proud. After watching this, Momo was fuming with anger that how calmly he fought. This was the moment she decided that she would ruin him and make him regret his life. The next match was Bakugo versus Momo. The crowd was worried for the girl as they had seen how Bakugo fights. But that was soon changed when they heard what Momo said when she walked on the arena. She said, "Listen here, you little shitty Pomeranian. If you hold back in this fight you will lose your balls, you understand? I will shoot them off, then I will cut your dick off and cook it and feed it to you as a hot dog. Understood?" Katsuki nodded at super fast speed. Now the crowd was afraid of what will happen to the boy. Midnight was about to say begin, but Bakugo stopped her and said, "I will be right back." He went in the tunnel and he came back after 5 minutes ready to fight. He then walked out and said, "Now I am ready." Midnight asked him, "Where were you?" Bakugo just said, "I was jerking off just in case I lose my dick." Everyone was surprised and Midnight said, "Thank you for your honesty, now fight." With that, Momo ran towards Bakugo at blinding speeds and punched him in the guts. Then she grabbed his collar and threw him into the arena and said, "Get up." Hearing the Bakugo got up really fast and prepared to fight and started making small pops in his hands and said, "I won't hold back, Yaoyorozu." Momo just smirked and said, "Good for you." Bakugo then rushed at her, but was before he could attack her he felt a large amount of pain in his guts. He looked down to see blood dripping out of his stomach and Momo's hand inside his stomach. He looked at her as he coughed up blood and said, "I am sorry if I offended you in any way, ma'am." Hearing this, Momo pulled her hand out, then cleaned the blood off of her hand and put her hand near his stomach. Bakugo was afraid that she would pull out an organ, but much to his surprise a green light came from her hand as she healed Bakugo. Bakugo stood up, grabbing his stomach and heavily breathing. He then looked at Momo and gulped. After that he turned towards the exit and ran out of the arena. He didn't care about his pride, his life was more important right now. The crowd were scared, but most notably Izuku, because she hurt Bakugo like that only because he was Izuku's best friend. So what would happen to Izuku himself? Izuku quickly ran away to his room to prepare for the fight with Iida. His only bet against Iida was the Speed Force or some ruins. He was brainstorming ideas until he found the perfect one. He then heard Midnight call his and Iida's name. They both arrived on the arena and prepared to fight. Midnight yelled, "Fight!" With that, Iida was about to say the Speed Force formula but was cut off by Izuku grabbing Iida's mouth at super speed and slamming him into the ground, winning the match instantly. Izuku stood up looking at everyone and said, "I am sorry that this match was so boring, but I couldn't risk Iida getting that power boost, otherwise I would have lost. I am sorry, my friend." Iida just laughed and said, "No problem, I understand and I am quite happy you won." The crowd was confused and so was Izuku, who questioned Iida by saying, "Why?" Iida had a sweat run down his face as he said, "Well, I didn't want to fight Yaoyorozu. Given how angry she is, she probably wants to fight you. Good luck, and if you survive we will meet again." With that, Iida left Izuku there as Midnight asked Izuku, "Hey kid, you ready for the next round?" Izuku, who didn't pay attention, just nodded. "A mistake he will regret." Seeing Izuku nod, Midnight asked Momo to come down to the arena. Izuku this time heard what she said and said, "Wait, what, right now?" Midnight just looked at Izuku and said, "Yes." Momo then came onto the arena and Izuku just prayed to God, any god, to save him. But he only heard one thing, "I am sorry buddy, but his is too good to miss out on now, Tadake, Tadake." Izuku was like, "Oh come on Vinai, please, you are the only one who can help me right now." The now known Vinai said, "Nah, I will enjoy this with popcorn." Izuku got angry and said, "Fuck you man," but he then heard a voice from the stands say, "Say that to my face, you idiot." Vinai looked over to the stands, finding Vinai standing there with popcorn in his hands, and Izuku gulped and said, "I am sorry sir. Please forgive my rudeness." Vinai just smiled and said, "I will only accept this apology when you will fight her." Izuku was now scared, but he decided that he needed to face Momo and that was the only option here. He looked at her and said, "Momo, I am sorry, please understand. I did it because I love you." This pissed Momo beyond compare and she said, "So you've chosen death." With that, Midnight said, "Go." And Momo rushed at Izuku with swords and guns slinging, which forced Izuku to be on the back foot, who was only dodging because her swords and bullets were made of uru, which could hurt Izuku and possibly kill him if it hit him in the right place. Izuku was looking for an opening, and when he found it he decided to rush and gut punch Momo at 50% off, which to his surprise didn't do anything as she just grabbed his face and punched him, causing him to spit up blood. Unknown to everyone, Momo had learned a unique thing during her training. She had learned how to create quirks. How, you may ask? Well, quirks are non-living things, so yay, she learned how to do that. And do you know, if you cut off an arm, the arm is no longer considered living. So Momo can create body parts and quirks, except for quirks like Dark Shadow. Izuku was flying back, but he landed on his feet after doing a somersault, and jumped up but was hit by an explosion which came from Momo as she had created Bakugo's quirk, and Izuku was pushed back in the air. As he looked down he only found Momo covered in smoke. He then took the chance to push himself towards her by punching the air behind him, but much to his surprise he saw something come at him. It was an axe, possibly made of uru. He couldn't dodge it and was hit in the chest with it. He fell to the ground. Still in the arena he was wincing in pain, as Momo walked towards him and kneeled down to meet him at eye level and said, "Are you sorry?" Izuku quickly nodded and said, "Momo, I am really sorry, please forgive me." Momo then sadistically said, "Apology accepted," as she pulled the axe out and kissed him, saying, "And I love you too." She had returned to her normal self after kissing him. She stood up and said, "Man, that was tiring acting like that." Izuku, who was healing slowly on his own, said, "You were acting." Momo just smiled and pushed Izuku, making him fall out of the arena, claiming victory for herself. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, the Juggernaut was working out in a special dome which had runes on the walls which cut his connection to Sidorak, so he couldn't be unstoppable, and was surrounded by guards who were his friends by now. Suddenly a large boom was heard as something crashed through the dome in front of them. It was a hammer with a long handle, and the hammer head was round and could be used from both sides. The Juggernaut was called by the hammer. He didn't want to go to it. He was resisting the temptation because he had realized that he was wrong, but the hammer then started to pull himself towards him, and when he reached the hammer he was struck by lightning as he was turned into something else. He then said, "The world shall now live in fear as my master is fear itself." To be continued. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Now we will see you in the next video.